So, we have a few things today, but we shall try and keep the business end to be relatively concise, um, just because we have exciting speakers which we shall be able to get to later. Now, one of our speakers, I will say in advance, Daryl Killin, has not been able to attend, but we have recorded content to present on his behalf. So once we get through the main business, we will then deal with any things that people want to raise as urgent business, and then we will have Daryl Killin's recorded content, and then we'll have our other two guest speakers, and then any miscellaneous business that people wish to stick around and discuss or bring up at the end. There'll be space for that at that time. So that's the general structure of things. We don't have any major motions. It's just the standard general business on this event. So the only major content for voting on is going to be the executive votes, which will be done via Opera vote afterwards. So we will have the opportunity for people who are nominating for executive to give a little presentation on themselves. And that will be recorded also, obviously, as part of this and put online so that when after this, the voting links go out for voting on executive positions, people will be able to review those presentations at that time. So, without further ado, we shall move on to the reports and we shall get through them. So, I will first do sort of my report as the president on behalf of the committee. Then we will have the report of financial statements. Now, if Michael Morosky is available, he will do that. Otherwise, I will probably have to do that on his behalf. And then Miles has a report as the National Campaigns Coordinator on our progress and our state for the past year and where we're going in the future. So, all right then. I'm actually super impressed by the turnout today, guys, by the way. After our efforts at the SGM to make it a little easier to make quorum, this has absolutely blown things out of the water.
I believe this is a record for both Fusion Party and all parties prior to Fusion.
Yes, I think that is accurate, or if not, it'd be damn close. It's actually quite inspiring to see everyone here today. The presence of everyone here reflects the commitment and energy that has been driving us forward over the past couple of years. And that's quite exciting. So for those who don't know, most unelected parties struggle to get through the 2-year mark between federal elections. And that bar was higher this year than ever before with the new membership requirements. Nevertheless, we appear to have come through with flying colours and in a great position for going into the federal election next year. Over the past year, we have made substantial strides in strengthening our foundation and preparing for the challenges ahead. Together, we have published and solidified our full values framework. That's not just about putting words on paper, it's about clearly communicating who we are and what we stand for. By making that accessible to everyone, this transparency empowers anyone to understand what we stand for and invites others to join us in meaningful dialogue. And already we have seen people have reacted very positively and very seriously, engaging with that content that we've put out. Just having that put up in a nice and clear way, it enables anyone to deep dive into what it is that we're standing for and what we care about without needing to put the pressure on an individual person to provide an accurate one-on-one explanation just off the cuff, which is a very difficult thing to do. So that's more than just about politics, that's about building community on a shared dialogue. We've also taken important steps to update our constitution. While that doesn't grab headlines, those changes were crucial for our long-term sustainability. They lay the groundwork for us to grow and adapt and be flexible as we move forwards by ensuring that our governance structures are suitable for the current challenges and the ever-evolving situation in Australian politics. On the tech side, we had obviously thrown a lot of things together somewhat rapidly for the last federal election, and some of those processes were unrefined and some of those were then subsequently neglected. In the past year, we've rebuilt and documented many of those processes. We've utilized them in a variety of ways. We have established an automation team and centralized our software resources into an organizational repository. We're extremely close to having an integrated event creation workflow to reduce the amount of admin work required of event organizers. We've migrated all of our files to a shared drive, which was not trivial due to the number of personal accounts that it was spread across, which has enhanced our data security and given us greater resilience against future disruptions, such as people leaving or any bad actors being given access to files unintentionally. We now have the ability to recover from that without loss. These advancements have not only streamlined our operations, but are very in line with our commitment to utilizing technology, something which I recently learned we are already quite ahead of the curve in the minor party space already on. I've had some interesting conversations with a couple of people this year from other minor parties, and have learnt that we are leaps and bounds ahead of a couple of them in how they operate and what they use to do their business. So we're doing good there. We've also reached out to former members who were a bit burnt out after the last period of time, and we've also built bridges with aligned organizations that had maybe previously had contact with pirates or science or whatever, but hadn't really had any interaction with us. And so we've generally, by fostering an environment of collaboration, we've strengthened that network and we've reinforced the idea among various aligned groups that our strength lies in our unity amongst those with shared goals. Particularly during what is traditionally the most challenging year between elections, I think these achievements are a testament to what we can accomplish, and also to the many talented and passionate individuals that are here and not here within Fusion. So, looking forward, there's an election coming up soon. As we look around at the current political scene, it's clear that many Australians feel quite disconnected from politics. The major parties drift further from their bases and they are caught up in a short-term thinking mode with partisan squabbles, and they have been blatantly making moves to cement their influence rather than dealing with the issues at hand. And this is leaving people feeling unheard and frustrated. This is a dangerous situation that lends itself to popularism. People who believe politicians are woefully out of touch with the needs of everyday people will latch onto anything that speaks to them and direct their votes there in protest. We have seen this very recently overseas.
We won't go in anymore.
Yeah. So this is where we can make a difference. Even before forming Fusion, we'd been working towards solid values-based messaging. In the past couple of elections, the independence movement has demonstrated the effectiveness of that at a small scale, and we're now in a position to do that same thing on a much larger scale. We are well equipped. Our values and our policy approaches and the way that we conduct ourselves reflects our belief that politics should be about bringing people together to work towards common goals. By upholding our values and embedding them in the way that we campaign and the way that we communicate, we can offer a genuine alternative for those who want to see positive change in our community, hopefully in a way that can cut through the current malaise, which is affecting a lot of politics right now. So, with the election coming up early next year, the majors introducing legislation to limit the influence of independents with donation caps and other things like that, they're going to be in full swing to try and regain lost ground. With the outcome of the US election and the tariffs that are likely to be introduced, the economic sting is probably going to be felt by the time people here go to the polling booth. The US is our major trading partner. The tariffs will certainly affect us. So now is the time for us to be loud, bold, and charismatic. If we can do this and remain consistent to the identity that we have built over the past couple of years, the potential for change at this election is unlike any other that we've had before. And I think we're better prepared for the election than any of us have ever been before. So it's a good time. Fingers crossed. Together, I think we can resonate with people across Australia through a fresh perspective with real solutions. So thank you for taking your time out of your day to be here. Your commitment fuels our journey forward and gives me great hope for the future ahead. And that is my report.
Bravo.
Apparently have you next, Miles. Are you prepared to do your report?
Yep. Yes, I am ready. So I have placed, I've written my report and placed it in the chat, and it should be publicly viewable. So anyone who wants to follow along at home can jump in there. I'll leave it publicly viewable as well, so that people can read it and review it and go through it in detail. What I will do is I'll read out a few sections of it. I'll read out some key sections of it, which I think are the most important, and also in the interest of brevity, as some sections are a little bit data heavy. To give a brief summary, I've included a log of all of the campaigns that we've included this year. I've included some interesting trivia. I've included some background of the early stages of Fusion about 3 years ago. There's a section on our national strategy in the past, strictly speaking, the past 24 months, and the outcomes of our campaigning this year, the process of validation that I've used to review our campaigning, recommendations I'm making towards the party for campaigns going forward. I've included some observations on the process we use to build up attendance for this AGM, to give an example of the capabilities. And finally, I've put together a statement about the future of the party. And so anyone who wants to read the full report, I'd encourage you to go into that doc. The summarized sections I'll present now. I'll start with the strategic plan. And the first thing to note is that after the federal election in 2022, I wrote a 24-month strategic plan for the party. And it has been approximately followed. And so I myself have been the National Campaigns Coordinator for Fusion Party for most of the last 3 years, and I've been working in and around that role. In a minor party, we tend to wear a few hats, and so I've been doing a lot of other things as well. But a big part of my personal goal has been to try and make myself redundant as much as possible so that I can focus more onto campaigning itself and building up the volunteer base. And so the broad strategy that we were working with nationally this year had 6 key principles. The first one was to participate in as many election campaigns as possible in order to build momentum and gain experience. The second principle was to gain momentum by running in repeated campaigns while maintaining and building our volunteer base across each campaign. Third principle was to support aligned independents and minor party candidates. The fourth principle was to foster growth of experienced campaign teams in each state capital. The fifth principle is to concentrate resources into key campaigns by developing effective remote campaign infrastructure, which I'm particularly excited about the technological base and the tools we've developed to support campaigning. And I'll also, a quick note there as well, that we've had a number of volunteers from all around Australia in remote or regional areas who've been able to participate in Fusion activities and Fusion campaigns and feel like part of it as well. And there's specific volunteers I'm thinking of in regional New South Wales, in regional Northern Territory, in regional Northern Queensland as well, who've made significant contributions to our campaigns over the last 3 years, thanks to this. The final strategic principle is to leverage data-based campaigning so that we're able to measure our progress and to validate or reject the theories and the theoretical approach that we put together. In my review, I determined that 5 of these 6 principles have been successfully implemented. The final principle, to leverage database campaigning, we have not been able to fully implement. And the challenge, and so the impacts of that have been that we've been unable to properly measure progress towards our longer term goals. And 2 challenges towards properly implementing database campaigning have been that we have had a lack of data from over 2 years of consistent campaigns within the same geographic area. And I think we can be forgiven of that, given that we're only 3 years old. And so we've struggled to have that sort of longitudinal data. And the second challenge is that we've struggled to mobilize volunteers with sufficient ability in quantitative modeling, statistics, and data analysis. I know that we have several within the party. I also consider my skill set to include that too. However, as I said, it's been, while we have had them do some work in the party, that sort of interacted with the difficulty of obtaining longitudinal data, and then also how we've rebuilt new infrastructure and processes quite a lot over the last 3 years. And we're only now, over the past 12 months, starting to stabilize that. So the outcomes from the last 12 months of campaigning, I'd first point out that we've run a record number of campaigns this year, both as Fusion Party, but also as all of the parties prior to Fusion. And the full log is in my report, but I'll just quickly count. We've ran eight campaigns that we have directly supported in one form or another at all levels of government. And so there's been a number of by-elections. There's been 2 state general elections. There's been local council elections. And I've also included the West Australia state election, which is in March next year. But the Perth team has been highly active and enthusiastic and meeting regularly for the last several months. And so I consider that also to be an ongoing campaign from 2024. Now, by the start of 2024, our collective campaigning had produced a clear set of plans, training modules, tools, and other campaign infrastructure, which was ready to be deployed by our experienced campaigners. With this level of confidence and a blooming set of campaign hubs around Australia, as I said, we deployed a record number of election campaigns. To jumpstart this frequency of campaigns, we've also developed a national strategy of identifying candidates from independent or aligned minor parties and from a similar movement to us, and then providing with volunteers, advice, and support in order to continue building our momentum. And by the end of 2024, we will have run a record number of candidates or supported a record number of candidates in any non-federal election year. Through our support of independent and aligned movements, we also managed to attract 2 elected councillors in the city of Yarra in Greater Melbourne, and that was approximately 18 months ago. And they provided valuable opportunities for developing legitimacy and familiarity with winning electoral campaigns. And both have strengthened their ties to our movement in that time. However, unfortunately, they've both recently lost re-election. And for one, the vote threshold was only about 180 votes short. And Councillor Bridget O'Brien was actually ahead on first preferences and very narrowly lost on second preferences. And so the key observation from that I make from both this 12 months, but then also supported by the previous 2 years to that, is that we've struggled to have organizer capacity on our campaign teams. And that was one of the major observations from the Yarra campaign in the debrief. And obviously, like, we were so close to maintaining Bridget's election status as elected councillor, that if we just had just slightly more capacity, just 1 or 2 more volunteers on the campaign team, I'm highly confident that we could have broken through and managed to leverage more of the community support and more volunteers and gotten that extra 180 votes. And this echoes other feedback from many candidates over the years who've ran solo or ran skeleton campaigns, that they felt overwhelmed and unsupported and unable to do everything that they wanted to do. So for the last 12 months, I'd like to give a special mention to key individuals around the country who've made significant contributions personally to both their local movements, their state movements, and their federal movements. And so I consider myself one of them, but also with thanks to Owen Miller, Alex Jago, Drew Wolfendale, and Simon Neeslaw for the significant contributions that you've made consistently over the last 12 months. And I'd also express gratitude to the numerous volunteers and candidates who have trusted our vision enough to participate in Fusion Party campaigns over these past 24 months. Validation is very important of any rationalist or empirical movement. However, unfortunately, we've been unable to effectively leverage database campaigning. Despite that, I'm confident that we've achieved a number of qualitative milestones, and these include maintaining federal party registration through 2 separate audits over the last 3 years. They were regular audits, nothing to be worried about. However, a number of other minor parties have failed those audits in that time. Additionally, we attracted and briefly retained 2 elected councillors and had promising discussions with several more elected members. We've significantly increased the number of election campaigns that we were able to run through our resources and through our state branches. We've pioneered previously non-existent campaign infrastructure, and as Drew pointed out as well, we're doing things which no other movement is. And in my report, I discussed the Greens Party, particularly in Queensland. I discussed the Teals and the Community Independence Project, that we've learned very powerful lessons from their successes, and then we've innovated and built off those. We've also, just in these last 12 months, achieved 4 record-breaking election vote counts. All 4 of those results were over 4%. And I'll name them as well. Owen Miller in the Council of Marybeck in Victoria. Michael Glanatsis, so Owen got 4.7%, I believe. And then Michael Glanatsis with 19% in Yarra City Council. Bridget O'Brien with 48% in Yarra City Council. And finally, Brendan Clark with 4.6% in the Hornsby State by-election. And so these are campaigns with Fusion campaign teams, Fusion volunteers, Fusion policies, Fusion values, Fusion branding, and we have successfully pulled off these incredible milestones. Another 2 validating qualitative milestones I'd like to point out is that our AGM attendance has climbed significantly since 2021 at the start of the party and prior. And we've had almost 4 times 400% attendance. And again, as I pointed out earlier, we've hit a record for event attendance with over 50 attendees online and paying attention to this right now. And I believe more have come in just over the last sort of 20 minutes. And obviously many, many more will be watching this recording later and reviewing the minutes and supporting us. And I personally have received almost a dozen apologies from people who wanted to attend but were unable to. And so this suggests a significantly more active membership. Even though on paper, we may be a small party, we have very high activity, very high engagement, and very high support from our member base, which is extremely promising. The final milestone, which I use to validate our success, is a bit more tongue-in-cheek. And not many people are aware of this because many of our members are not totally online like I am. However, our Discord party server was in fact raided by Greens party members around 12 months ago. And we successfully managed to engage in respectful dialogue, and eventually they got bored and left. And so I consider that a win, just the fact that they were motivated to do so, because that clearly considers that the Greens party think we are a threat to them. And I will happily acknowledge that we have many alignments and many agreements with the Greens party, but also that we have significant disagreements. And many of us are here because we have those disagreements with the Greens or with many other Australian parties. And so we present a different set of values and vision to them, which is clearly distinct. My key recommendations for the party moving forward are fourfold. Given that the majority of our strategic plan has essentially been met, it suggests that this current set of party activities are succeeding and should continue. Not to say that we can't improve them, obviously. The second recommendation is that we need to develop our capacity in data analytics in order to strengthen our long-term planning. And so this is a call out that if you have skills in quantitative modeling or statistical analysis, then please come forward. We will take any kind of volunteering, but this in particular has been a gap over the past, pretty much the last 3 years. The third recommendation for the party is that we proactively seek to develop a minimum number of candidates in each Australian state and territory. And my recommendation has been 1 lower house candidate and 2 upper house candidates. My final recommendation for the party is that once we have reached this minimum threshold of candidates, 3 per state, that we then focus as many of our resources into building campaign teams for them. Whereas in the past, I've recommended for running skeleton campaigns just to get our name on the ballot, that I'm no longer in support of that policy after getting feedback from many candidates over the years that they have been overwhelmed and unsupported. And given also the lessons that we've learned from Yarra City Council with the loss of Bridget O'Brien as an elected councillor of the party, it is clear that having a large and vibrant and functional and effective campaign team is essential for the success of any campaign. Now, I've made some commentary on the philosophy of the party, which is fairly short. I discussed the values and vision and mission of the party. I'd invite anyone to go and read those if they're interested. However, I'd just like to sum it up is that I believe we are Australia's first meta-modern political party, that we are a new movement, and that the time we are an idea whose time has come. So the next section, I've discussed some of the capabilities that we've used in campaigning with particular reference to the Fusion Party AGM. And again, I'd like to say that this is an incredible turnout. It is a record-breaking turnout, one of many records we've made this year. And a large amount of effort went into planning, organizing, and preparing for this AGM. And many of you here today would have received emails, SMSs, phone calls, or messages from party organizers and supporters to encourage you to come and attend and participate for a variety of reasons. I'd like to make a special mention to our volunteer from regional New South Wales, who is several hours drive from the nearest other party member, Hayden Meredith, who personally called approximately 60 members across Australia. So congratulations and thank you, Hayden. That is incredible work. I'd also like to shout out that we have organized 5 in-person meetups all across the country in state capitals for this event. And the turnout again there has been incredible. And so thank you to everyone who's organized or participated or attended those. That given that we aren't even technically, Perth is technically campaigning, but for all of the other states, we're technically not campaigning at the moment. And so well done and thank you for that. So the summary of what I'm saying here is that we've had a vast effort from many, many individuals and teams, which has been poured into our juvenile movement, that in practical terms, we've mostly failed to build an electoral movement over the past 3 years. Fundamentally, though, we are here for a vision which has brought us together, which has united us and keeps us going. And at the core of this is a deep concern for the future of humanity. We acknowledge that there are critical challenges, that there are existential risks facing us in the years ahead, and that we are one of the few movements in Australia or globally who have the courage to try and address these challenges. And we believe that we have the proposed solutions. Then they will be gently sufficient through the sharing of knowledge, through the advancement of technology, through humanist values, and through the celebration of democracy and democratic values, to name just a few. So we have the tools, we have the knowledge, we have the platform, and we have the people, but we now need the opportunity. A federal election is 6 months away, and we are barely ready. But as you can see from, I hope from my report, and from the huge amount of energy today and all of the milestones that we've smashed in the last 12 months, that we are no longer the minor parties that we used to be before Fusion, and we are no longer the Fusion that came together 3 years ago, that we have now come into something else. So as the dawn of 2025 arises, so too does a new political movement, which is already changing the nature and the face of Australian politics. So I'm asking everyone right now to think about the federal election, which we expect will happen in May of 2025. The rise of the far right, of authoritarian, illiberal, and inhumane political movements into the gap left by stagnating and incompetent mainstream political parties places a very serious risk that early next year, or this time next year even, that Australia will be dominated by a Liberal national government. So my goal is clear. I'd like 2 Senate candidates in each state, 1 House of Representatives candidate in each state capital, and all of our resources to be put into recruiting campaign teams to support them. You don't need experience, you don't need skills, all you need is motivation and the willingness to put in the time and turn up. We will provide all of the training, we'll provide all of the tools, and as you can see from the dozens of people around us, that we have the community and we have the volunteers. And so with this, I believe we can elect a new generation of politicians who actually deserve to be there. And there's a chance that this could be the last peaceful election in an increasingly chaotic world. And our last best hope is to keep building this movement for a brighter future. So I invite anyone who wants to discuss this or have any comments or questions to read the full report. And also to, we'll have a strategic discussion under general business. And then, of course, I'm on every single social media platform. As I said, I'm terminally online, and I'm very, very willing and happy to chat and talk about any of these. Thank you, Drew.
Thank you, Miles. That was very, very much, very much appreciated and very passionate. You were a lot more specific about some things than I was, but that's fair. Alrighty. Alrighty. So the next thing on the agenda is the financial report. I don't believe Michael Morosky has connected, has he? No. All right then. That's okay. We can do that. So When I can share the right screen. All right, so our financial reports have been reasonable. As of the end of the financial year, we had $13,000 in assets and various liabilities. So net assets of $11,000. That is not bad in the historical scheme of things, particularly for 2 years after an election at the low point. We have had generally positive indication in the past year that people actually now are taking us seriously, and that has been reflected by a gradual increase in a willingness to provide some financial support to the party. Yes, Owen, you've got your hand up.
Just something worth noting, the $3,000 in ads, there's still $1,500 unspent, ready to advertise, yeah.
Yes. So some of those expenses, as in that case, are expenses which we still have the ability to gain further benefit from. That also applies to things like Nation Builder. That's an ongoing expense. It rolls through. Yes. So about in this particular case, in this particular period, the wrap up of the Incorporated Science Party is responsible for a large chunk of the monetary donations in kind. So that of that 18,000, about 10,000 is from the Science Party's formal closure of the Incorporated Association, but that was money that was essentially still available to the organization in one form or another through one form of campaign or another. So that's not a substantial change. It just looks very good in this particular sense because it's popped up in this yearly period. But overall, our other income and our operating expenses were not overly far apart during what is traditionally the year in between elections when things are the worst. So we are in a relatively healthy position compared to sort of historical situations. We did not put a lot of effort into fundraising this year. Organizer energy was necessarily spent on a lot of the efforts that we were doing to establish the functions of the party to better equip us for the federal election. That does mean that we didn't actively fundraise because that also is a big drain on organizer energy, and we couldn't do both at the same time. One of the key things that we will have to do for the build up to the election is to actively fundraise as part of campaigns for the election. That's a normal component of an electoral campaign, but it's just something that we will definitely have to focus on, and that's worth communicating. It might actually turn out to be easier than previously, given that the major parties are setting things up so they won't have to fundraise themselves as much. We shall see how that goes. Anyway, major parties doing major party business. But that's it. That's all the thing. This will probably be circulated with any formal written comments after the meeting if Michael gets a chance. Because he's not here to clarify it for formal acceptance. So that's that. Now we have a little bit of the legal business. Now, where's that gone? From the page.
We can see the motions.
Yep. Yeah. I'm just finding a link. So, this link has been on the event page the whole time for people to review, but I shall put it in the chat as well right now for people to be able to attend. Yes?
Do we need to accept the minutes from the June SGM?
That is a good question.
Oh.
I looked into that and I couldn't work out for sure, but I also couldn't find the minutes from the SGM, which is slightly embarrassing.
I think we uploaded the video anyway.
Yeah, we uploaded the video, and to some degree, we could take that as an indelible record.
Through the chair, Drew, you at this level, you only need to accept the annual general meeting minutes from last year because you're still at AGM level. The SGM would, sit in under meetings generally.
Yes, that is generally how I understood it. We have had a tradition in the past of accepting the SGM minutes from a previous year during an AGM. I believe that's been for completeness and transparency. But as far as I could tell when I looked into it, we didn't strictly have to deal with the SGM minutes here. We have the full video of that online and don't have them to accept anyway. So in the chat, I did post the link that has been available on the event page to the minutes from last AGM. I was not available, or I was not involved in the organizing of the last AGM particularly. So we have rescued the minutes courtesy of Alex Jago. So this one is a floor vote that we put forward the motion that the minutes of the previous annual general meeting of Fusion Political Party held on the 26th of November 2023 as made available be confirmed as a true and correct record of the meeting. If we shall start a voting in the chat momentarily. And then if people can look at the minutes if they need to, and then post that in post an aye or a nay in the chat as applicable, that would be appreciated in a moment. Voting is open on that motion.
People who are here in person, how do we vote? Do we just raise our hands or?
If you can have the person on your computer there, record the number of A's or nays from your meeting and who is providing them, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, I just asked everyone in Sydney if they were in favour, abstaining or opposing, and all six from Sydney are in favour. So if you have non-members at your meetup, a reminder that they are not legally entitled to vote. They are welcome to make comments in support or opposition, though.
All right, that looks like there's an overwhelming indication that there's no issue here, so that's good. Can I have a second person confirm that the ayes appear to carry the motion successfully?
I'm not seeing any nays, and I'm only seeing one abstention.
Yep.
Looks pretty unanimous.
Right. We have accepted the minutes of the 2023 AGM. Once again, thank you, Alex, for apparently being the only person to have rescued those successfully.
They weren't even rescue. I just take my own minutes.
Yeah. This is one of those things that we didn't needed to chase up after last time. All right. Now, the statement of accounts has been provided, in this case for the end of financial year. There is no attending commentary other than what I was able to describe myself, unfortunately, due to Michael Morosky's absence. But the numbers are all there and accurate, so the motion is put forward that the statement of accounts for the financial year ending 31st of July 2024 be approved. If anyone would like to follow up on any comments, they are welcome to email contact@, and we will take any collective comments from people who wish to ask questions about the financial statements, and we shall respond to them in bulk. So. And the voting for that has been opened. Thank you. And that again appears as if the ayes have it successfully. All right then. Cool. That's the legal business. Now we have the slightly more exciting business. So obviously this is the AGM for which includes the committee elections. Now we have obviously had several nominations which have been published on the website. If you haven't had a chance to review those, don't worry. The way this works, as I'll say again, so we will have currently presentations from everyone who has been here. Sorry, everyone here who is nominated to present themselves to you. And then we will have those recordings available as part of an electronic opera vote that will be sent out afterwards. So you will be able to review them in the context of a vote, and then that will be tracked electronically. At this point in time, if there are any last minute people who wish to nominate for something, you are welcome to do so. Notably, there are a couple of positions on the Dispute Resolution Committee that are currently still not contested.
Go ahead.
Excuse me, Drew.
Yes.
Toby here from Melbourne.
Yes. Hi, Toby.
Hello. I have some experience as a layman with lived experience of disability, and if I can offer my informal services promoting health technologies, I joined when it was the Fusion Party. So if I can offer my services, I've given speeches at unis and TAFEs and schools on lived experience. And if I can offer to be an orator on disability and future technologies, I'd be happy to. I mean, I'm not sure whether that can help you, but I would gladly offer such services.
That's fantastic, Tony. As we approach a federal election, we will generally attempt to appoint spokespeople for various policy areas. We will obviously have to have a policy spokesperson for health and disability services and things like that. So if you are volunteering in this capacity to be a spokesperson in that sort of area, that's fantastic. We can absolutely consider that. I'll take that as a positive thing for the moment. Charmed.
Hello, it's Imogen actually. I'm sorry, my phone is Charmed 1.
There we go.
It's just, I haven't changed my name. Sorry about that. Good meeting so far. Thank you very much. I am not a member, but I think I will join, and I'd be very happy to help out where I can. I don't know if that's useful, but I have done some mediation training through university, a mediation and conflict management course, and I'm a licensed security guard. I've dealt with a lot of very real conflict. Older white men don't really like me having a position of power, but I don't like their attitude towards me. So, you know, I am always aiming for peaceful resolutions and raising the bar for all humanity. Just thought I'd put that out there. I'd also be interested in some statistical stuff. You know, I would like to get better at putting those stats together, and so it'd be fun to work with that.
All right then. If you do in fact join, then yes, we can.
Yeah.
Well, we should have a technically. So we should have a vote here on the floor as to whether to accept Imogen's, I suppose, nomination for DRC after she joins, given she can't technically qualify today.
Well, Imogen, just a quick question. You said you've had some experience in security. You're used to pretty hostile people. Have you ever been to a polling booth? Have you met the big socialists?
I've got my aspirations. So, I mean, like for me, for my career, I want to be founder CEO.
It sounds as though.
Like what? Yes, I have. I've met a few colourful people. And when I have my mediation hat on, I'm less reactive than I might otherwise be known to be at times. But surely I've definitely experienced that. Oh my God, I can't believe you're saying this to me, that I just want to, hold me back. I know what that feels like. I recognise it, and I know it's not a good way forward for peace. So I've had some very good learning experiences politically.
Cool. Yeah.
Thanks.
Owen, you wanted to say something?
I did.
Oh, no? Okay, sorry.
Wait.
Oh.
All right. The motion is in the chat. If Bryn has seconded it slightly in advance, but I'm happy to accept that Bryn is the seconder. If people would like to indicate assent to Imogen's proposal, that would be appreciated. All right, people are absolutely in support of that, Imogen, so welcome. You have been accepted as a nomination for the DRC. looking forward to seeing you around more. Fantastic. All right then. So is there anything else that people want to raise before we officially declare positions open and move forward?
Nope.
I'm seeing a hand up.
Yeah, that's me.
Yep.
Drew, I'm not sure whether this is the appropriate time in the meeting to ask. So forgive me if it isn't, and tell me to wait if it's not. But there were several policies that attracted me to join the science party, and I'd like to know if they're still policy. Things like extension of healthy human lifespan, a treaty with the Indigenous people, better healthcare and education. I mean, I went on my ramble about a happy workforce is a healthy, well-educated one, vice versa. I mean, and I have complete commitment to that, Drew. As the kids say nowadays, I will die on that hill.
Yeah. So as a general comment, most strategic policy discussion would occur at the next stage after the nomination speeches. However, on this particular point, I can clarify that all of the policies advocated for by any of the various branches, whether that be science, whether that be pirates, whether that be Vote Planet, etc., are considered to be at least tacitly supported. The process of strictly like structuring and including everything into the Fusion policy platform is an ongoing one that we have had limited resources to do in terms of like clean up presentation, how we put it forward. But that doesn't mean that there's, it's.
Drew, just to jump in, checking our policy website. Yeah, so we do explicitly support quote unquote steps towards a treaty with First Nations. And then also we support treating aging as a disease. So this would unlock research funding to get at, the workings of our core physiology to increase our health span.
Also the reason why I put myself forward as an advocate for health technologies is because on one end, we've got prejudiced people who don't like disabled people, and it's as bad as I'm telling you, it's as bad as racism. And on the other, we've got people who go on about how great it is to be impaired and how it's our identity. And neither one is true. We're people, and I'm committed to getting the message out. And I'm committed to helping you guys because your policies...
What's our policies?
Our policies, this is as close as I get to religion. It touches my heart.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, thank you very much. And yes, we shall
have a strategic chat after the nominations. There'll be a point for this. And I do agree. We need an update.
Strategic policy.
I'm not meaning to dominate. It's part of my disability, the blathering.
It's okay. We'll stop with any further policy conversation here, but there will be a space to raise any burning concerns on that front later. And certainly, yes, anything that we've previously supported has at least general support going forward, and might just need a bit of work to clean it up. So we're there. All right then. So at this point in time then, I will now formally declare the positions of the executive and of the Fusion Party to be open. Party is now in caretaker mode. So, no. Cool. So, nominations. I have been juggling things and have not actually got my stuff up in front of me. So can someone other than me do their nomination presentation first?
I'll go.
Thank you, Amanda. Much appreciated.
No worries. Hi, everyone. My name's Amanda Van Kamperma. I'm a 48-year-old mum of 2, and I live on the Gold Coast. I currently work as the Chief Operating Officer for a digital health startup. I'm not someone who naturally seeks the spotlight, but I love supporting those on the front line. So I have 28 years experience in operations, and I believe I'm very well equipped to assist the executive team and any candidates of the Fusion Party in the role of secretary. In terms of my political interests, I'm very passionate about housing, secularism. I did actually come from the secular party, the environment, and preventative health, particularly the vaccination space, which is where I currently work. I'm happy to take any questions that anyone has, either in the chat, otherwise you can find me on the Discord as Amanda Queensland. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. So that is Amanda. She is nominating for Secretary of the party. Certainly, I endorse her. She seems great.
Drew, are you ready, or I can go?
If you're happy to go, I'm happy to wait, but I'm more organized now.
Okay, sure. Okay, so hi everyone. Oh, guys, please finish my speech. Yeah, so I've been convener and secretary for this past year. Oh, well, secretary only part of it. So yeah, there's a great deal of responsibility I take on officially as convener. I'm one of the spokespeople for the party alongside Drew. And so for me, this isn't just about giving speeches and things. This is also, you'll see, we've overhauled the website over the past year. That was mainly myself doing this. I feel, we need to update our brand identity, get out with, put our best foot forward, really sell our vision to Australia. I've also tried redesigning the t-shirts. I didn't get the best feedback about that, but lesson learned. Anyway, yeah, I've been running again. So last year when I was running for Aston, we got 2.89%. Recently running for council, I was openly a Fusion candidate. And so yeah, we scored 4.5%. This is our best result so far with Fusion branding. And yeah, I'm nominated as the candidate for Wills. I'm still eager about that. So yeah, hopefully if you trust me to be the convener again, I'm still eager to do it for another year. Thanks. There you go.
Thank you, Owen. I love when technology is painful. All right then. So I'll do my bit now. So obviously I am currently the president. Well, was until 5 minutes ago, and I'm nominating for president again this time. My philosophy when I started out doing this was very much to be an enabler. There's so many moving parts in a party like this that is spread across as much geography as Australia has, and it has always been my aspiration to keep that linked as well as it can be, to facilitate people to be able to get what they need where they need, whether that's digitally or whether that's physically across the country. And to make sure that we have the processes and the structures that actually support that to be done sustainably and with as little friction as possible. That's always been my goal and my general philosophy. I can do public speaking, but I generally prefer not to be in the spotlight if I can afford to. And I think that's been fairly represented by the amount of progress that we've made this year and by relative lack of attendance to monthly meetings. Apologies for not showing up to those more often. But also congratulations to everyone that did make the monthly meetings happen reliably. That was amazing. We've done a lot, and I think I would be a good person to continue making sure that the processes we've developed and the efforts that we've done are carried through successfully to the federal election. and I would very much appreciate it if people trusted me to continue that work, at least for this next term. Thank you. All right. I don't even know if that's spotlighted correctly. Oh well, it is what it is. So the next one on the agenda is the treasurer, for which Imelda has nominated. Are you ready?
G'day everyone, Imelda here, sitting under a gum tree in the wonderful town of Kimber on Eyre Peninsula in South Australia, on my way back to the far west coast. So I've nominated to be treasurer and assist in a deputy role with some other roles, which you'll see on the nominations. Joined the party only a few months ago, have some experience running as a independent candidate in the Northern Territory a couple of years ago. Got a lot of gravel rash from that, which is good because I have a lot of transferable skills now. And I would love to see this little micro party become the next, what did you say, meet a modern party of Australia. Let's do it.
Thank you very much, Imelda. That's Imelda nominating for treasurer. Imelda also nominated in a deputy capacity for National Campaigns Coordinator, but as the only person nominating for treasurer, I think that's where we're encouraging this to be applied. So next up is Miles.
Hey everyone. So once again, I'll give a plug for my report to go and check out some of the data and some of the stuff I presented in there. Give me a second to pull up this. So I'm nominating for the position of National Campaigns Coordinator. I have been in that role for most of the past 3 years since the start of the party. Around 2022, I've participated in most of the Fusion campaigns around Australia, either in person or usually through remote support, advice, and training. I've written numerous strategy proposals and campaign reviews over that time, as well as been on the ground observing winning and losing campaigns from many other parties and movements in the past 6 years. Some of the most valuable and informative experiences I've gained from being on the front lines of the Queensland Greens meteoric rise in the past 8 years. I have lived in or around the heart of Greensland, as it's known, but I've also been heavily informed by the Community Independence Project and other campaigning organisations. I've read widely on political philosophy and organising theory, which I combine with my experience in campaigning on the ground. Over the past decade in Fusion and prior to that in the Pirate Party, I've fulfilled nearly every role in a political party. I've predominantly focused since then with Fusion on training, which includes train the trainer, as well as creating modular documentation, as well as volunteer activation, mobilization, and coordination with a particular focus on geographic branch development. I've additionally assisted in statistical analysis, strategic planning, social media, website development, as well as helping to develop technical tools for the party. I will skip the rest of my report because I've already essentially touched on some of the key points there. But again, I want to give a plug for my personal politics. I consider to be a political metamodernist, and it could potentially be described as universal social liberalism or green social liberalism. But the most evocative way I've heard to describe it is as the Nordic ideology, which borrows from the Scandinavian model of social democracy for economic, environmental, and social issues. Thank you very much, and please vote for me.
Thank you, Miles, when I turn my microphone on. All right, and that is all of the executive positions. Now, Cami Cordner-Hunt is the current registered officer and has indicated an intention to stay on as the current registered officer. At the moment, unfortunately, this weekend she is attending a celebration of life and is unable to present herself and has been quite heavily distracted by events. But I can vouch that she is capable and a valued member of the team, and I appreciate that she is doing well as an RO, and I would like her to stay on. So that concludes the executive speeches. I will just invite Jeffrey Marlowe to speak up in a moment. Jeffrey Marlowe has, after dealing with some minor technical difficulties, put up his hand as a late nomination for the DRC. So Jeffrey, would you like to speak now?
Hey guys, name's Jeff. I've been in Brisbane for the last 15 years, but recently moved down to the Central Coast in New South Wales. Look, I've been in hospitality for the last 20 years, 21 years, throughout a number of roles, and I've created quite an extensive reach throughout every community that I jump into. I believe community involvement is highly important in and around every sort of resolution situation. You can't discover an answer on your own. A lot of the questions that we need to get these answers to, we need to be involving people. We need to be bringing each other into the conversation, and it can't be a one-sided affair. I'm heavily on the thought train that we all have an opinion and all of our opinions matter. But we need to find like a thoughtful and a progressive path forwards that's going to suit everybody involved. You can't just come up with a resolution at one end that's going to help some person and not the other, because ultimately you're just going to breed discord and enmity against people. You know, I've got 5 kids of my own, so I've got extensive situational dealings with conflict and working through situations like this. Look, throughout my career, I've managed quite a number of very large and successful hospitality venues. For those in Brisbane, I was one of the team that actually opened up the Howard Smith Wharves precinct only a few years ago. So dealing with these high-end and quite stressful situations is quite a strength that I find of mine. And in fact, it's something I kind of thrive on. I get bored when I get tired, and if there's nothing to do, then you got to find something. So, look, I believe this would be a role that I'd be heavily suited for, and I would really appreciate a nomination. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And can I confirm, are you currently a member of the party?
Sure am, yeah.
Okay, in that case, we can accept that nomination as is.
Thank you.
Fantastic. All right, then. So that means we now have actually 5 nominees for all 5 positions on the DRC, so that's fantastic. Thank you. That is... so at the moment, if... I don't think Andrew is here. Andrew is one of the other nominations for DRC. He's put his...
Andrew is here in person at Sydney.
Yeah. Would Andrew like to speak on his... Do
you want to, what do you want to say? Shall big chat?
Position for that. Am I on? Hello, my name is Andrew Dowdy. Am I on?
Yeah.
Okay. So I've been with Fusion since its inception. I was involved in the development of the new Fusion Constitution. In fact, helped write the DRC process. Earlier, prior to that, I was, I think, 10 years with the Australian Pirate Party. We're mostly working on the development of policies. Several stints as policy development officer. There's a couple of occasions where I was part of the National Council. So been in and around all this quite a while. I think I'm generally fairly level-headed in the way that I want to resolve disputes. when it comes to the core function, I think, of fusion, I think is actually in the name, in that we want to be able to fuse the ideas and the interests of a lot of different people, and resolving disputes is an aspect of that I'd like to explore by being part of the dispute resolution committee. So hopefully that'll be fine for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Much appreciated.
Quick question, Melbourne.
Yeah. In the event of a dispute, does the dispute officer act as a mediator and the two disputing parties sit down, or do you send a report to the dispute manager, or how does it work?
The answer is all of the above at different steps in the process.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is an expectation that you make legitimate attempts to resolve the dispute for yourself before you raise an issue. It's not to be raised arbitrarily or just for the heck of it or for all purposes. It's when you can't resolve it yourself, you then raise a request through the National Council or equivalent and the executive, and then they will invoke the DRC officers to engage with that. And at which point there is a whole set of requirements that are laid out in the Constitution and dispute resolution policies, and you can go read those online.
Okay, thanks. Actually, something worth pointing out, depending on the party, if the DRC delivers a decision that, some people don't agree with, then in some parties we can kick out the DRC.
The DRC make recommendations which get taken to the executive. So ultimately, we don't become the final arbiters even by ourselves. We bring a recommendation.
Oh, yeah. So I agree with what you're saying, Andrew. Sorry, I couldn't help thinking of the Greens just momentarily.
Let's not talk about the Greens issues.
So some people from the Greens were actually involved in the development of the DRC policy. And I think there's some history there that they really brought to that. So a lot of the processes we've laid out in the DRC policy are specifically to avoid that sort of situation, where you don't let the DRC just become sort of these dictators. You can't have that. It needs to be a much more amenable policy.
Yeah, it's very robust. All right, then. The other nominees are Liam Pomfrey and Bryn Busai, who have both been incumbent on the DRC for the past year and have done an excellent job. I'm not going to say that you guys have to speak, but if you would like to speak, you may do so.
I mean, I'm here and I can speak if you want me to.
It's up to you, Liam.
May as well. So, hello everyone. Dr. Liam Pomfrey. I've been a member of the Fusion DRC since its inception, a long-term member of the Pirate DRC. Long story short, I've mostly been part of the DRC in part because I'm on the board of the Australian Privacy Foundation, and that's meant I've not been able to be too involved with the day-to-day workings of the party. I kind of need to keep the party at arm's length, which helps to, allow me to be something of a neutral arbiter when there is need. Thankfully, we've not had too many cases where things have actually gone to the DRC, but there have been a few incidents. So, we're hoping we don't have to go through that again. But I mean, it's important for any party to have a robust system for handling these things, and I think we have been able to handle things rather well over the years. So yeah, I don't know what else I can really say. Really, I mean, if anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. But
that's all good. Thank you, Liam.
No worries.
And Brenda, do you have anything to say, or are you happy to sit on?
Happy to sit on.
Yeah, Bren's done an excellent job. Bren is very process oriented and has done a great job in his time so far. So
yeah, it's just it's a bit hard for me sometimes to say enough about myself. Sometimes it's like extracting blood from a stone at times, especially for myself.
Yeah. No, thank you very much, Bren.
I understand that weakness of me, myself.
All right then. So that is then all of the current nomination speeches and everything. So that is the soft close of the primary formal components of today. We are just going to rearrange the order of things very slightly because one of our speakers needs to leave sooner than planned. And so if there's no extremely urgent issues that someone needs to shout about right now, I would like to introduce our speaker, Greg Chipp, to do his presentation today.
Thanks, Drew. I think I've got my microphone and video on. Hi, everyone else in Melbourne. I'm in Melbourne, of course, and represent a registered charity called Drug Policy Australia. And the drug issue is a passion of mine. It's been a passion of mine since university days, where I was smoking a lot of what we called pot in those days, and just scraping past with my university studies due to that overindulgence in cannabis. But 40 years later, I find myself still passionate and angered by the prejudice against, a plant, for God's sake. That's what we're talking about, cannabis. We're talking about a plant. Before I get riled up, I'll perhaps just morph back to a little bit more of my history. As my bio said there, I was involved with my father, Don Chipp, who was leader and founder of the Australian Democrats. So I had a fairly front seat view to the 70s, 80s, 90s political debates of the time. I remember having Malcolm Fraser and Billy Stead, a number of these iconic Australian politicians at home for dinner at certain times. And as a brash 16, 17-year-old university student, I'd get the chance to big note myself and argue the toss on a number of social issues with politicians. And I remember Malcolm Fraser, who I'm sure the political history will remind that he's a former Prime Minister, and he was talking about cannabis and made, I guess, the faux pas that cannabis leads to the use of harder drugs, which, is obviously totally unscientific and, a false argument of causality. And I managed to make the glib point to him, well, look, that might be right, but all cannabis users or heroin addicts also started on Mother's Book, breaking the causal chain. So, the debate in terms of drugs with myself has always been a passionate issue. I moved from university at 21, 22, got a corporate job, used to use a lot of drugs in my 20s and early 30s. As can happen, I had some emotional upset, some early 30s, became a bit of a cropper and ended up addicted to heroin for probably 3 or 4 years. Fortunately managed to overcome that. But it certainly taught me a lot about addiction and compulsive behaviours. And it also highlights the point to me that I'll touch on a little bit later in this short talk, that addiction is something that we just don't bloody know what it is. We used to think we knew what addiction is. It's a compulsive behaviour. But it used to be a moral failing in terms of alcoholics who had an addiction to alcohol. But, it's much broader than that. Gambling addictions, they're not related to a substance. My own personal experience certainly taught me a little bit about addiction, overcoming your personal habits, and hopefully, how to redeem oneself, which is what I guess in a sense I'm doing now at over 60 years of age, campaigning passionately for drug reform. To another minute on the biography, I basically recovered from my addiction, got a job in web design development for 15 years. And then when my son left home, I would have been about 50, 52 or something. And my political passions took front seat, and I formed a party called the Drug Law Reform Party in 2013. It was a party that, to my mind, was just trying to raise the issue of drug reform to one of rational scientific basis, as opposed to one of ignorance and prejudice, which is what the drug laws are based on. And I'll go into a bit more detail in a minute. But to finish that, so I spent 8 years running two Senate campaigns for political parties, very much like you guys. And, I absolutely applaud your efforts, your enthusiasm. I've kept an ear and open to your speeches before, some of the talks. Look, it's just getting involved in politics is just chipping in and making a little bit of a contribution to the body politics, the political system. And that is how change comes to effect in society. And realizing that the Drug Law Reform Party had limitations on its ability to affect public opinion, I closed down the Drug Law Reform Party in 2018 and decided to pursue my advocacy on another vehicle, namely a registered charity called Drug Policy Australia. And it has the mandate to ultimately advocate for a total root and branch reform of our current inadequate drug laws, infrastructure, or drug policies in Australia. And to get registered as a charity with this particular platform was particularly difficult, because we're talking, again, 7, 8 years ago, a lot of prejudice about drugs. And the only way to approach the drugs is to inform the prevailing opinion of how to approach drugs was to criminalise, arrest, stigmatise, demean, reduce drug use, reduce the introduction of drugs to people, and that will somehow lead to a better outcome for society. Well, our position as a charity was challenging that, and simply made the point that there is a better way to approach the drug issue based on science and information and facts, and that doesn't entail criminalising and arresting people for drug use, because, as I think blind man can see, it hasn't stopped people using drugs. The figures of people that have used a drug in Australia is 42% of the population has tried a drug, and they're low figures because it's a government survey. Not everybody likes to fess up to an official survey that I've tried drugs. Unlike that, I'm unashamedly honest about my experience with drugs and my lived experience. I've said as much to government inquiries, because I do believe that the first step in this reform is, coming out a bit like the gay rights movement, if you like, or modelling this idea of being honest and forthright, and that somehow, undoes the prejudice, the misinformation. So, look, that's me. I'll just move on. We haven't got much time, but I just thought it was, I guess, opportune and practical to give you guys a little bit insight into, I guess, the policy platform of Drug Policy Australia in terms of the drug issue. And to some minds, it is radical. To others, it's only rational. When I campaign on the streets, I have a T-shirt that says, "The drug laws are stupid." And that really is probably the catchphrase of the thoughts that I hear back from people that get that the drug laws aren't working, is that they are ridiculous, because they are not achieving the end to which they were set, which was namely to increase the utility, happiness of the citizens of any particular country. Drug policy is meant to make people, save them becoming addicted, minimize mental health outcomes and everything else. But unfortunately, in a very inverted way, it promotes those outcomes when people are put under pressure, stigmatized for their drug use, can't seek help for their drug use, which was a problem I had when I was addicted to heroin. It took me 2 years to get the gumption to go and see a doctor and say, look, shit, I've got a real problem here. I'm, using heroin once or twice a day. And that was because of the environment and the stigma and a my own, I guess, failure to, break out of that paradigm. But just a couple of other quick points if I could run through. The drug laws, this should be particularly relevant to the Fusion Party and those, wanting a scientific-based, the laws that we enact to control the citizens of any country. But the drug laws are not based on science. You'd like to think that, okay, well, some wise men got together, even if it was 50 years or 100 years ago when a lot of these drug laws were implemented, and said, well, look, here's the problem. We know what addiction is. We know what these drugs do to the human body. And the only way to stop this is to criminalize and, basically, as some countries do, take out and shoot people that use drugs, possess drugs. And think I'm kidding, but I'm not. China, Russia, there were over 200 executions for drug-related crimes in the world last year. So that approach still has remnants today in our drug policy. The history of the drug prohibition, and look, in world context, world history, it's just absolutely an exceptional occurrence that all nations of the world through the United Nations have unanimously agreed in 1960, 71, these international drug control treaties through the United Nations, that they should ban the use of drugs. Sorry?
Psychedelics.
Psychedelics, yeah, I'm actually at another word, but psychedelics is close, but not all drugs are psychedelics. And that's another element where psychedelic drugs have massive potential benefits to, mental health and recovery and even a spiritual experience. I used a bit of LSD and mushrooms in the early 20s, if you like. And, some of it was just bloody good fun. And other times it had somewhat of an insightful, quasi-religious spiritual experience for me. But that is another side, however. The word I was actually thinking of is psychoactive substances, which includes, alcohol, cigarettes, tea, coffee, a number of other things, including your psychedelic drugs, of course. But as I say, such unanimity on drug policy was forced on the world by strong-arm tactics from the United States, if you look at the history of it. The United States, for no matter what you think of it as a country, but they, through their, I guess religious zealotry, you've got to go back and look at America was settled from, for religious freedom, people from Europe in the 17th century. And that puritanical streak still lives strong in America as the Trump ascension proves. But this Puritan ethic basically says that pleasure is a way to hell. Things feel good, whether it's sex, drugs, alcohol, should be limited, and if these real zealots have their way, through the power of the state, with all of the criminal consequences that go with that. So with that sort of zealotry, religious ignorance and prejudice export from America to the United Nations, we had the 1961 treaty. And look, certain countries in these three drug treaties, and I can't go into too much detail, but some of you may be aware of this, but there are three drug treaties agreed by all countries in the United Nations that ban the use of these drugs, the possession, the sale, and a number of things. It was at the zenith of the American power at the end of the Korean War, 1958, 59, early 60s, where they had that power. Post-World War II, Korean War, US had saved the world. They set up the UN. And again, they imposed upon every country. India, for example, had used hemp for only about 5,000 years without massive social consequences. It was a part of their culture. There were religious ceremonies and in fact, whole groups of religious orders that used cannabis. Bolivia used coca leaf, not so much the refined coca, but coca leaf. Now, the US strong-armed these countries to ban and criminalise possession and use of these substances as well over a 10-year period. And it was just a big fella bully pushing the little fella, because America, of course, realised that they couldn't ban these drugs if you could jump across the border and use them quite freely. So that prohibition was forced on the rest of the world, some, you know, coming willingly and others being forced. But as I just make that point again, that it is exceptional to have such unanimity on a policy item as significant as drug use through all nations on the earth. And the consequences of that is mass death, addiction, people, you know, lost, families broken up, so much misery that this really, to my mind, is one of the greatest social issues of our time, and an issue that I really think it's just fantastic that you guys are picking this up and following it through and trying to get a scientific basis for your policy, as are some other parties, namely, of course, the Greens have got some terrific policies. And then the legalised cannabis is doing good work in WA, Victoria, and Victoria. And I should declare here, I am a member of the legalised cannabis party, being a passion, but I don't speak on behalf of that today. I talk as a managing director of an advocacy charity, and I obviously need to keep the two very separate in whatever I do, being Drug Policy Australia being a registered charity. So look, the drug control treaties limited the sovereignty of individual nations to control the health aspects of drug use in their countries. The great irony in this drug debate too is the fact that America, that I think fairly could be called the home of the prohibition, has in subsequent years legalized cannabis in about half of their 50-odd states. Totally legal. So, you know, and they've done that in contravening the United Nations treaties, but through a little bit of legal shenanigans. That it's not a national policy, it's a state policy over there, therefore it doesn't contradict the UN Charter, just sheer bullshit, but that's the way that pursued it. Canada has totally legalised and regulated cannabis. Other countries, Germany, are following. There's a domino effect now across the world. Unfortunately, Australia has dug its heels in, and I don't know why they would do this, because it's not politically, you know, a vote winner is the trouble. The figures now are that over 60% of the population supports legal regulation of cannabis, or at least decriminalisation of cannabis, which I'll get to in a minute, is not criminalising people that use cannabis. So it's over half the population. What happens in the two major parties is that they've got their conservative, you know, support, I guess, base, and they're very scared to offend it. This support base has sway in these parties, which makes change very slow to occur, and it takes the efforts of good people like yourself, other smaller parties to ratchet up and pressure change in those major parties. So, you know, that's what I do as an advocate for reform of the drug laws. Look, I'm conscious of time. I don't want to hold you up. You've had a long meeting there. You've got some other speakers, so I just probably got another 5 minutes if that fits in with your timetable. And give me a hand up or interrupt me if you want me to shut up a bit and move on to your meeting. What's that? We got 5.
Hey, Greg. Simon here. Thank you so much for coming and speaking to us. Really appreciate it. Would you have I'm sure there's lots of questions, but we've got some questions that have been sent in advance. Would it be okay if we could answer a few questions in a moment or now?
No, Drew, look, that's great. And I was just getting to that. Angus sent in a question on video, which I'll paraphrase for you in a minute. But I just was going to give me another minute just to segue.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mike, and that's where I was going. You know, cannabis in Australia is in a state of change. There's, you know, movement worldwide, legalising, regulating cannabis. Australia still has massive prejudice and hasn't moved. The United Nations in 2001 moved cannabis from Schedule 4, which was the schedule that classified drugs with no medical value and addictive, which is where heroin and other drugs were listed, to Schedule 1 in 2001. And that was through the World Health Organization, that a scientific review got the facts and just basically said, look, this classification is just rubbish. Let's change it. And machinations took a while, but did change. But we still live with that, misinformation in Australia. And it's reflected, although we have medical cannabis laws in all the states, it's reflected in what I can only just call blind prejudice and dedicated ignorance. That the driving, and this goes to Angus's question, who put it on video there. He wanted some information and asked the question of what changes are occurring in the driving with THC in your system in Australia. And the way it stands at the moment is driving with THC in your system, any detectable level of THC, even if it is a week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks old, is automatic suspension of your license. And there are cases of cannabis, which is different to alcohol, that leaves the body in a very short period of time. Cannabis lives in the fat in the body and can survive anything for 2 weeks or longer, and means if you do a roadside drug test, you have a little bit of cannabis in your system, but not impaired, you can lose your license. So look, that's a situation that's been changed. It's been looked at by the Legalised Cannabis Party. It's been looked at in Victoria, which is part of Angus's question, that we have a trial examining the impact of impairment and detectable levels of cannabis. That unfortunately will be 2 years away. In the interim, there was a motion passed in the Victorian Parliament that would give the magistrates the discretion to not cancel someone's license for having THC in their system, if they could reach some bars that they weren't impaired and everything else. The only state in Victoria that has allows you to drive with some cannabis if you're not impaired, and I do mean medical cannabis here, and not use your license, is Tasmania. So what I guess is being reviewed is, can you have an impairment test for cannabis that would stop the situation of shit-faced cannabis users causing mayhem on the roads, versus perfectly capable drivers with a skerrick of remnants of THC in their system being allowed to drive. So look, there's massive outrage at this, and I'll just finish with one little emotional point on that. The bottom line is, I have had grown men in tears on the phone to me about this issue, that have lost their license up in a country town. He was a chippy, had to work on construction sites. The local cops knew he was a bit of a pot smoker, set him up on Monday morning, and he lost his license. He couldn't work, couldn't pick the kids up from school. It was just a tragedy. And this really is an ongoing issue, very live issue, that hopefully parties like yourself can address.
Thank you, Greg. I think we're about out of time, but there's been a lot of questions come through. I think we're going to have to arrange for another session. It's such an important topic, a very interesting topic. So thank you for addressing us today.
No problem. Glad any time.
Thank you, Simon, for that. All right. Thank you very much, Greg, for your time. I understand you had to leave soon, so that's the reason for the slight switch up of the order here. Thank you. Helps if I turn my video back on. All right, so before we carry on with the other couple of speakers that we have as basically entertainment to expand people's discussion this afternoon, the other thing that remains is what is for any urgent or any significant or strategic business that people would like to raise from the floor, because that will then be the final actual serious business for today.
I did have one question to Miles, just for clarification. I wrote this down somewhere. What is quantitative modeling? You guys said you needed somebody who was qualified.
So there's a difference here between qualified and having the skills. And so qualified is kind of shorthand. But basically, quantitative modeling means you can look at the data, you can then build basically a model of it, which you can then project into the future to make predictions based off the data. So it's a subset of data science. There's a few other aspects of data science that would be useful for the party, but that is one of them. It's fairly mathy.
All right, fair enough. So just somebody who's had experience or read a science journal before and understands what p-values are, or a little bit more than that?
Yeah, probably a little bit more than that.
All right, fair enough. That's it.
That said, it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing if someone who had less experience than that wanted to give it a try if they had some time to really play with things. We can always learn a little bit as we go along.
I think that comes down to how much time you guys had to teach somebody the ropes. I'm not sure if that's something you have available under your belt.
Well,
yeah, I think
your calculus is because like after a certain point, if you haven't done calculus throughout high school and then even early university, there's a bit of assumed knowledge.
Yeah. All right. Does anyone else have any things they would like to raise for concern at the moment?
I want to put an informal shout out for more volunteers and candidates. If you are interested in finding out what it means to be a candidate, or if you're interested in finding out the volunteer roles available, please do make yourself known. You can do that at any time on the volunteering page on the website, or you can reach out to one of the party officers, one of your local state coordinators, or one of the national executives, such as myself.
Yeah. Actually, on that point, one of the other things that I mentioned previously when Tony brought up his area, that as the federal election comes up, we would like to have spokespeople that have expertise in particular areas that we would have policy on. So if you are a subject matter expert on something that we have a policy on that is either adequate or perhaps in need of developing further, and you would be willing to be the contact person to answer questions to the public or to media on that particular area of expertise, please reach out and we can, look at the situation of you being a spokesperson for the party on that topic.
Milspec is raising his hand.
Hey guys, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
So yeah, Milspec here. I just thought I'll take a minute just to introduce the team a little bit over here. So we've put together a bit of a campaign team for next year's election, which as Miles mentioned is in March. We've got 3 candidates. We've got Tian, if I can get Tian to raise their hands. We've got Ben. And we've got Angus, who wasn't able to make it in person today. I'm not sure if he's online. And we've also got Avesta as well. So, really appreciate these guys putting themselves forward. And we've got, for anyone online who's in WA, we've got fortnightly meetings on Tuesday nights. And we're starting to plan more in-person events. So you can see T-shirts laid out. This is sent to us from Simon. So big thanks to Simon for sending that over. But we're going to start to produce like banners and things like that and start to organize in-person events. So really welcome you guys to join us. Just send me a message on Discord if you want to participate, and really welcome you guys to anyone in WA who wants to join a team to reach out. Thanks guys.
Thank you, Milspec. All right then. If there's no other business arising from the floor, we will then draw a close on the formal business for today, and we'll go to our next speaker. But so, speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, I'm conscious that WA's time is running out, so that's why we're wrapping up that bit there. Obviously, these will be recorded online, so Peter Xing is the next speaker. We'll do you next, as you're actually here and you're in person, and we'll do the recording for Greg at the end. You are still muted at the moment, Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. Hi, everyone. Let me know if I can present my screen. There we go. Switch it up here. That was great, and actually, it's great to be here in person. Good to see Miles. Thanks for shout outs and coming down and doing your digital nomad stuff in Sydney. It's been so engaging. So we had a whole bunch of people just catching up over the past week or so. Yeah, definitely makes a difference. I think it's a touch sport, contact sport. So politics, it makes it easier after a beer as well. But just for everyone that I haven't met before, my name is Peter Xing. Hopefully you guys can see my screen as well. And what I might do is I'll reshare and I'll make sure the audio is turned on too. How's that for the sound quality? Just checking. All good? Thumbs up.
Sounds good.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, so my name is Peter Xing. I am the co-founder of Transhumanism Australia and Transhuman Coin. And I've got a day job over at Microsoft selling Azure OpenAI. So, happy to help on any of the AI policy stuff. Today, I wanted to talk about our abundant future. So looking at how we can accelerate our infrastructure and supply goods and services to improve our quality of life into the future. The really sort of burning question for me is, how can we as Australians and using these policies make a real difference? How do you use memes and get these ideas out to actually get people to look up? So this is the, I think, interstellar Cooper quote, so we used to look up in the sky and wonder our place in the stars. But now it feels like we're just looking down and, worrying about our place in the dirt. And for Australia being things that digging out of the dirt, it's sort of quite poignant. We've got also a QR code there for the original article that this talk will be going through. So feel free to take a screenshot of that and check out the article for the full details. With that, just a little bit about me. That's not me, that's my dad. So I'm the little one looking out in the zoo there. So I was born in a place called Harbin, China, in Heilongjiang. It literally means Black Dragon River or something like that. But you can see it's up top north there between Russia and North Korea. It's a bit of a rock and a hard place. It was born in 1985. So, back then it was quite this little town. It was quite cold. It was like negative 40 degrees as well in winter. And so the folks over there decided to celebrate this, making the entire city turn into ice and snow. And they call it the International Ice Festival and Snow Festival. But, that's just something they do for shits and giggles, right? So, for me, I met my wife and she's from Guangzhou and met her in Australia. Her parents are from Guangzhou. So she was born in Armidale, New England and New South Wales. And, it kind of reminds me because she's like the year of the dragon and her sort of element is also fire. So she's like a fire dragon. I'm from the north parts of China and sort of like the Game of Thrones couple, right? So without the incest stuff, we got like Jon Snow and Daenerys there. So that's the sort of joke we make. My dad, when he was studying, he studied English. And so he was an actual translator and a tour guide. So when he was giving some tours in Harbin, Heilongjiang, there was a guy by the name of Bruce Stale who worked at the National Geographic. And at the time, this was really in the late 80s, early 90s. He was touring Harbin and, there'd be some signs in the hotels that are, written in English wrong, like deception as opposed to reception. And you'd have, just pictures of people just being really cold and trying to stay warm out. But so you can see here, there's Wen Bin, that's my dad. So this is sort of how I grew up. So my mom and my dad over outside, I think that's the Forbidden Palace or something like that. And there's me, a little commie hat there. And so we sort of decided to get out of there. So my dad, he got sponsored by Bruce Stale to Tasmania. So he studied initially at the University of Tasmania. then transferred across to Hobart Technical College because it was much cheaper, and you could get student fees much cheaper, but also you can get on a visa path forward there. So the whole international student journey was taken up by my dad. He came here by himself initially for at least a year, I think. So it was pretty tough for him. You can sort of see he's lost a lot of weight during that time. But he worked really hard. He was, teaching ping pong, table tennis over at the local schools, giving therapeutic massages to the locals. Those are the skills he learned from his dad, my grandfather. And, eventually he brought myself and my mum along to reunite after about 6 months into it, after he got that student visa, and he came along. I think that's a Russian hat there or something like that, but he managed to bring it into Tassie. Did the old, I think it's a Ford Falcon. I can't remember what that is. A Toyota, big yellow wagon. We sort of decided to move on from Tassie to New South Wales instead. So sort of took a boat with the car onto Port Melbourne, and then drove all the way up to Sydney. I think he got robbed a couple of times on the way because there's just so much stuff on that car, but it was a rough ride. We've sort of went all around I think Greater Sydney throughout the journey. So we started in like Linfield, and then we moved across to Camaray and Leichhardt. I think we ended up in Burwood and Guildford and Granville and Mount Druitt. I've been everywhere, right? So this is like the mean version of New South Wales, Greater Sydney. So if you haven't seen that, it's like sort of how every local would call their area, or at least in a friendly yarn. But I've been everywhere. But I think during my growing up, because my parents worked really hard, washing dishes, just any kind of work they could find. That was the only thing that they left with me. Luckily, it was a Sega Mega Drive, and it was Street Fighter 2 loaded up. So that's the majority of my childhood, just looking at Street Fighter around the world. Really getting nostalgic here to see it. But the thing is, that's what you get when you have one child policy. So this is no siblings. You can see the impact it's had on China as well. You can tell that right now that's also making big trouble issues with the ratio of males to females, but also even without the one child policy, I think it's 3-child policy now. If you have both your parents that are single one child parents, you can have more kids. But people were like, why would we do that? I had enough on our plate trying to carry our grandparents and as well as our parents in China. And I think the working age population, you can see the projections here, is actually that we're going to become, I guess, extinct at this rate, with the decline in population and population collapse, because everything's in below replacement number of kids. So it is actually sort of trying to demystify that whole issue around overpopulation. So my parents now, they're just sort of traveling around the world. They're just doing, they're still pursuing their dreams and stuff, and they're loving it. But they get to see, I guess, the other stuff in the world where we're not making those.
The video audio has taken over.
Yeah, the video audio has completely taken over. We can't hear anything.
Just the video. Here we go. Here we go. So then, luckily they did a tourist agency. They did a travel agency, not as good as Flight Centre, so they couldn't compete with that. But as part of that, they bought a little Macintosh. It was like an LC575. Took me to a lot of training, funded me through K to 12, and went to Sydney Tech year of 03. And even, I drove from Mount Druitt to Sydney Tech, right? So this is like an hour and a half drive, but it was worth it because I was lucky enough to go to a selective school, and they had some good maths teachers there, especially for a Chinese kid. So I needed that. We also did, went to university, Sydney Uni, did a commerce and law degree, trying to make parents happy. It's a standard Chinese path. That's my partner, Elise. She's former head of Metaverse and Futures at KPMG. Did sort of business stuff out of the university, and started doing more analytics, digital and data, and then into AI, machine learning, and now I'm over at Microsoft. But the interesting stuff happened when I was at Deloitte and I came across Singularity University. So these guys were an emerging tech think tank, and they would organize executive leadership summits and programs to really think about what's going to impact humanity over the next 5 to 10 years. And I came across Ray Kurzweil, who sort of made a lot of predictions over the years, and he reckons by 2029 we're going to get to human level AI, or artificial general intelligence. And the singularity concept is really where you don't know where technology is going to go after 2045. It literally is like a divided by zero era, div era, right? So that's where I think anything can go. And we no longer know what that means for humanity or what that means in terms of technological advancement. It's all going through this law of accelerating returns, which I think now is popularized by the AI companies as the scaling laws. But a lot of the concepts I got out of Singularity was that there'll be things around longevity. So how science and technologies can extend our healthy human lifespans and make us, I guess, help extend our longevity. Make us smarter as well. In a sense, we always have been using tools to make us smarter, and with our smartphones, and now with AI, and eventually with Neuralink and all the other things that could expand our intelligence. But also well-being. So we don't just want to live long and be smarter. We just also want to be well, more fulfilled, live more fulfilling lives. And it makes a lot of sense being part of the humanist house right now, because a lot of that's, you know, the sort of concept philosophies around our commitments, living humanist values continues on despite this whole merger with technology we're seeing in this whole transhumanist movement. So I'm joined by a couple of the transhumanists here with Stefan and a few others. Brendan Clark was one of the OGs. I did run back in 2016 at the federal election. I think it was kind of a joke because it was just, you know, Malcolm Turnbull back then. He was running in the seat of Wentworth, of course. We got like 1%, but you know, it was a way to get into the news, get into the zeitgeist, and you know, I think we were called the mixed bag or something like that, mixed bag of candidates back then. And then we did have this transhumanist party, which merged with the Future Party at the time with the teams, and which became Science Party to become more mainstream and get the policies a little bit more understood. And of course, now we've got the fusion of science, pirate, secular, and climate emergency, and of course the Vote Planet guys as well. So it's quite an incredible journey. It's great to be part of this collaborative team. With the transhumanists as well, it gives you opportunities to see what the universities are doing, what state government and federal government is trying to invest in terms of future priorities, what the global emerging tech community is doing. So one of the transhumanist movement leaders, I think this would have started back in the 70s. You got David Wood there, who sort of created the original Symbian OS that acquired by Nokia before Android killed it all. And you got Natasha Biedemore over there, and she's sort of started the Humanity Plus movement. And we've got Dr. Avinash Singh over at UTS, University of Technology, Sydney, doing brain-computer interfaces. So he's a bit of a gun. And, you know, we did some talks as well on longevity and emerging tech and super intelligence. But really, I think with Transhuman Coin, this is how we're connecting all those disparate groups of people, of transhumanists, with an official currency. And this is sort of our currency that we work with each other. So think about it as a combination of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the transhumanist movement is basically Transhuman Coin. And all those collaborative transhumanist entities and partners that we've been working with around the world. We have a big presence in Africa because I think they can supersede the need to have a bank. Just a mobile phone, an internet connection, and a crypto wallet allows us to be able to tap into the ability to, you know, get them to do marketing or for the transhumanist movement, and we give them opportunities here in the Western world as well. So the Lifespan.io is another one. We funded a sort of autonomous electric wheelchair called Abby by GoGo Tech. It's the Fox G1 Genetics Foundation that looks at things around, you know, people, the kids that actually suffer from this particular brain disorder growing up. So Fox G1 is one of the ones we've funded as well. And we're part of the Blockchain Australia membership as well. So there's all these events around the world. This is how we sort of not only look at our Australian network of emerging tech policies and people, but it's a global movement. So we'll have those sort of resources available, you know.
Hi, Peter. Just
the particular topic I wanted to raise today was that, oh, sorry, Melbourne, you have a hands up, sorry.
Toby, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Peter I've got several questions, if I may.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
First of all, it's a bit of a concern to me as someone who's interested in these fields. There seems to be some real hostility from certain people towards transhumanism, and I'm willing to say that part of it is not understanding it, and nobody understands everything, but it's hostility, and it's also seems to tie in to other bizarre theories like anti-vax theory. I don't know where we get these people, so to speak. I don't know what motivates them. I sort of know how they think, and it's scary, to be honest, because it reminds me, it's nuts. Their opposition having grown out of wherever it's grown out of, you read their opinions and you just go, my goodness, you're several sandwiches short of a picnic.
Yeah, my comment, yeah, sorry, I can comment on that as well. So people fear what they don't understand. And this came out when we were working with the Future Party guys, right? The naming of the Future Party. We did a sort of sample across our members and also the potential members of what their thoughts about the name of the future is. And they actually thought, or the future, some of them actually thought the future was scary. Because for, I guess the not so youthful, the future might mean that they might get some disease or they might pass away. So the future is uncertain. And I think even with transhumanism, the whole concept that we could be using more technology. I mean, people today already fear technology, like AI. I mean, look at the headlines because it's so much easier to create those clickbait articles out of fear and amygdala and tapping into that. So transhumanism, of course, is going to naturally attract a lot of sort of conspiracy theories and people that think that there is an evil cabal around the world that's trying to control the world. But I think at the end of the day, we've tried to rename transhumanism a lot of times. Take that Humanity Plus organization as an example. The thing is, you lose a lot of that key concept through trying to dilute the message. For us, transhumanism, at least, is a term that we can all unite against for. And transhuman is, aligned with the humanists and really looking at how we transcend our biological limitations through science and technology. So yeah, that's sort of my initial comment about.
What attracted me to transhumanism was I have several very serious medical conditions. And and I'm very frank about that. And if I can get to a stage in my earthly existence where I've overcome that due to better technology and medicine, and if I can lead other people to it, then I'm all for that, Peter, and I'm committed to that. That's why I'm here today, and that's why I've offered my layman services to the party, because I've given speeches and such. And so how do we take the 1 in 5 Australians in this country, and that's not even counting mental illness, how do we take people and make them happier and more productive?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, we really got to look at things around the impact that treating aging as a disease, for example, and actually helping people extend their healthy human lifespans, like what David Sinclair's wrote in his book. And that impact should be quantified, because if you think about the impact it's having on our health system, the lost productivity that those people are going through, not only the pain and suffering that individuals are going through, but the lost productivity in the economy, how much could be unlocked in both business, entrepreneurship, societal culture, everything. So we need to really look at quantifying that, because I think we are at a point where a lot of these technologies are becoming enabling for it to actually be achievable. So it's no longer, you know, when people talked about AGI, you know, artificial general intelligence 10 years ago, they were laughed out of the room. And now it's just about, you know, how do we achieve it, whether it's over the next 2 years or next 10 years. So, you know, the Overton window is really expanded. And I think now also looking at aging and the debilitating diseases that we could solve with science and technology should also be at point.
Sorry, if I could just jump in here. Can we allow Peter to proceed with his presentation, perhaps?
Oh, I'm sorry, Peter. I didn't mean to impose.
Oh, that's all right. No, this is a good discussion because we're keen to keep discussing as well. I'll just finish up the slide and then we can have a discussion as well around the other topics. But the main thing I wanted to touch on was right now it's that the whole legal immigration side has been politicized. So, you know, you even got Labor trying to, well, I think they have reduced international student caps. So, you know, my dad was an international student, and without that opportunity, I don't think I'll be here and presenting on something like this. I'll probably still be back in communist China and, you know, trying to see if I'll be willing to pay for another kid. But the impact on the universities, which is our research houses, which is sort of where the future of, you know, I think human culture, humanist values will be really curated, and having those campuses has actually been impacted. So this is a list of the universities that's impacted. You can see the percentage changes it will have. There are some winners, but, you know, net, those big universities are going to be impacted. And I really think that back to that original meme we talked about of trying to look at the stars, but we're stuck in looking at the dirt, right? Nathan Waters was one of our original transhumanist members, and even his sort of digest of news is around this whole impact of net overseas migration to Australia, legal migration. So it's not like the US where we have border issues of illegals coming in. This is legal migration qualified for all the sort of visas that we've put in place. And he's saying that this is the biggest impact because I think it's true. People are suffering. The cost of living crisis is real. And I think what my sort of discussion with Nathan and the broader team was that, well, we should be looking at solutions rather than continue to look back and, you know, point at a scapegoat, which, you know, it is one of the causes. But one of the biggest causes is probably actually inflation and the lack of housing. You can sort of see any discussion around this is quite sensitive. Any of these sort of interactions, people get really emotional, and it boils down to people saying, oh, your retarded ideology, I assume would be completely fine to import 20 million people tomorrow. I mean, that's a good point, like, because you can't just build all this housing overnight. So there is sort of some balance you got to drive in the near term. But as a meme, as a thought process, we should be driving policies that expand the abundance of the supply side of the equation and not look at only the demand side and looking at the dirt. So he's got a point. Look at Australia. It's like the second last affordable place in 2023 in Q3. This is from the Demographic International Housing, and you can sort of see at the top of the list, the most affordable was actually in the States, ironically, right? And Singapore's up there, and Singapore's tiny. How the hell is Singapore able to solve this? Well, it's because they actually own a lot of the actual public housing, right, and provide that. But also there are projects already showing that, you know, Chinese projects that have failed actually driven the cost of those apartments very, very low. You know, there's actually the other side of the equation where all these ghost cities have been created, like Forest City, for example. That's an island off Malaysia. But now the crypto bros have taken advantage and actually bought some of those apartments and blocks, as well as the hotels and the lands that's been created. And this costed about $100 billion for the Chinese to build. And I think the Bitcoiners have actually bought big part of it and calling it the network school. So my wife Lisa's actually over there, and I'll be there in a couple of weeks, actually. So there's going to be a whole entrepreneurship governed by Bitcoin and, you know, decentralized autonomous organizations, sort of net new revival as a result of this reclaimed island that was created and failed. So Network School is something that Balaji created. He's a former CTO of Coinbase. So he's been driving this whole network state concept. It's around decentralizing how we organize ourselves via people, places, and laws. And, you know, the pirates, you guys are very familiar with these peer-to-peer networks. And with Bitcoin is sort of and smart contracts on Ethereum and other layers and the layer 2 solutions, you can look at creating these laws through decentralized autonomous organizations and getting that direct democracy of the vote going as well. So people, places, and laws happening now at the network school in over at Singapore, in Malaysia. And there's Brian Johnson, who's a big proponent of the longevity movement, the Don't Die, and that's his son. I think they call him the Blood Boy, but he embraces that. And so Lisa's saying hi to those guys now. And Vitalik, of course, the founder of Ethereum. But then also looking at the dirt thing again. So this is the port strikes that happen in the States. So these are, what do they call them? The longshoresmith, I think. Yeah, so basically these guys control the ports. And I'm just going to play a video of what they said.
These people today don't know what a strike is.
Right.
When my men hit the streets, from Maine to Texas, every single port will lock down. You know what's going to happen? I'll tell you. First week, be all over the news every night, boom, boom. Second week, guys who sell cars can't sell cars because the cars ain't coming in off the ships. They get laid off. Third week, malls start closing down. They can't get the goods from China. They can't sell clothes. They can't do this. Everything in the United States comes on a ship. They go out of business. Construction workers get laid off because the materials aren't coming in. The steel's not coming in. The lumber's not coming in. They lose their job. Everybody's hating the longshoremen now because now they realize how important our jobs are. Now I have the president screaming at me, I'm putting a Taft-Hartley on you. Go ahead. Taft-Hartley means I have to go back to work for 90 days. That's a cooling off period. Do you think when I go back for 90 days, those men are going to go to work on that pier? It's going to cost the companies money to pay their salaries. Well, they went from 30 moves an hour maybe to 8. They're going to be like this. Who's going to win here in the long run? You're better off sitting down and let's get a contract and let's move on with this world. And in today's world, I'll cripple you. I will cripple you, and you have no idea what that means. Nobody does.
Yeah.
These people today.
Yeah, Melvin, you guys had a question. Sorry. Yeah. Transhumanism room.
Hey, we just had a few questions if you're ready for them. The first one is a quick comment regarding people who may be conservative or religious who have an opposition to the concept of transhumanism, and I would make the argument that if it's a religious-based perspective, that they expect the world to be in a certain way, perhaps in God's image, as the way I see it. Well, I would say that God has given humans technology and for us to overcome those perceived limits, and what isn't a limit is quite arbitrary. There's a lot of modern medicine which a lot of these people take full advantage of as for treatment and such. So it's not really any different to any other scientific advancement in the space of medicine. And we've got a question about three short questions. One, how can transhumanism help to overcome a disability as opposed to simply enhancing an able-bodied person? Two, how can transhumanism be performance enhancing including perhaps the use of drugs, but perhaps some psychedelic substances might allow someone to see the world differently than they otherwise would have. And three, will we be seeing more transhumanists have a more prominent role in the party, like the early roots of it? Because there's a lot of interest in transhumanism, especially here in Melbourne, and we love it, and we want to see more of it.
That's awesome. Thanks so much. 100%. Yeah, definitely. I think myself, Stefan, Brendan will get the team across in Australia. I was heavily involved with the Fusion Party. I agree with your initial comment as well with the religious stuff. There's actually, it's embracing, it's complementary. There's also, Christian transhumanists, Mormon transhumanists, sort of embracing the same ideology, just applying that to the science and technology lens as well. And then I think, your question around how can it help people with disabilities, things like Neuralink, we've seen it already treat blind people to be able to see again through pixels that are driving directly from the cameras to the brain directly. So it sort of eliminates the need to go through those processes that might be damaged in the eyes, and also mental illness. That's another opportunity to look at better understanding of the brain through Neuralink, and with AI as well, to have that positive feedback loop of better understanding the brain to then treat those mental illnesses. And potentially that's where it could also supplement what psychedelics could be able to do, because these are the technologies that will try to, more specifically target those areas, those regions of the brain that might be overly and underly amplified. So yeah, that's a great way to use that tech.
Is there a line between transhumanism and just modern medicine?
I guess it's more of an embracement of modern medicine and to accelerate, the scientific discovery. If you think about the effective accelerationist movement that sort of got the means going to really drive tech adoption, for us, it's really extending beyond, transcending those human limitations that we have biologically, and saying, well, don't let sort of tradition hold you back. Really embrace science and technology to see how we can actually make this better for humans. And so, the transhumanists, when they started back in the 70s, sort of got inspired by the moon landing. We're like, if we can go to the moon, we can sort of take this, abundance mindset everywhere throughout the universe, and not be limited by the biological, molecules and proteins in our bodies.
Okay,
Right. Sorry, I didn't realize the mic was still hot. Keep going.
Yeah, no worries. Yep. So yeah, these are the examples of that sort of abundance future. So, we just heard from the longshoremen talk about that supply issue. They're basically blocking the ability, going on strikes and blocking because they're not getting paid enough. Well, we should be looking at how do we, help them with this technology. China right now.
I'll hit Peter when you're ready.
Yeah. Just the main, everything being automated.
Yeah, mate, I'm a big fan of transhumanism and that, but sorry, your example of like these fucking longshoremen, they're getting greedy, let's replace them. We can't use this as, our political, our political branding.
Yeah. But I think what's happening now is that you can actually give them like a 2-year severance package, and then I think, they'll still be better off. I think at the end of the day, you got to help them train for what's still relevant in the future. Why would you hold back onto a job that's going to get automated anyway? I think the mindset should be, how do you complement or augment your current role with those operators to try to automate and do more, so that you're not going on the danger lines during lockdowns. You're not putting yourself in danger in those sort of big cranes. You can operate more and create more supply. And I think at the end of the day, that might be a better option for humanity, letting the robots and creating that abundance to make things cheaper and more accessible.
Yeah, definitely a more palatable message.
Yeah, I feel like this segment might bite us if someone comes on, but I would generally say that for people who may have their jobs replaced by AI, there'll be better jobs available to them, fulfilling jobs that we can, especially with universal basic income. That we've been saying this for years. What will happen in the future when the jobs get automated as universal basic income for that? And now it seems like time is happening. A lot of people are struggling to reimagine themselves into new roles. So
yeah,
we need to provide a path to support people who may be replaced rather than toss them aside.
Yeah, 100%. We've got to get them to look forward to this as opposed to be scared of it. Because if you think about what it means, having a lot of supply, right? It's like economics 101. The prices go lower, and so rather than printing more money for the same stuff, we're creating more stuff. And so, you know, with this whole property issue as well that Nathan was worried about, we need more examples like this. So this is
Elon Musk's $60,000 unfoldable tiny home.
It's a 361 square foot house, kitchen, bathroom, bed, couch.
So how long does this take to unfold?
I think we can unfold it in like 30 minutes. Welcome home.
And for size reference, this tiny home is 39 square feet, smaller than a 2-stall car garage.
It's about 19 feet by 19 feet.
He's in the bedroom and you can be in the kitchen and have a full conversation, but it still feels really roomy because of these super high ceilings. So Elon Musk bought one of these. How did that go down?
Sorry, I actually can't comment on that.
NDA?
Okay.
And then there's 3D printed housings you can bring as part of your existing supply chains of getting that out. We've all seen the wee robot events.
Welcome to the Wii Robot Party. As you can see, I just arrived in the Robotaxi. The cost of autonomous transport will be so low, you can think of it like individualized mass transit. We'll move from supervised full self-driving to unsupervised full self-driving, where you could fall asleep and wake up at your destination. The vast majority of the time, cars are just doing nothing. So what would happen if you have an autonomous world is that you can now turn parking lots into parks. Something we're also doing is inductive charging. The Robotaxi just goes over the inductive charger and charges. The Optimus robots will walk among you. And what can it do? It can do anything you want. Oh, and what happens if you need a vehicle bigger than a Model Y? I think it's going to be a glorious future. With that, let's party.
Rage. I think
This is Elon Musk's
that might have been sort of like a dream come true. Sorry about that. There's like 5 videos playing all at the same time. But Nathan did take that on board as well. So he's been building a autonomous van network called van life. I mean, you know, the van life movement has been around for a while, but he's actually going to create these modular vans. And when he saw the RoboVan or RoboVan, he's just said, well, that's great. Now I can use that as the platform to create this autonomous van life. And you look at Australia, all those big highways and being able to do road trips collectively, do fusion party meetups across every state and actually have those vans running for us and do the campaign trail. Like, I think that's something that's going to be very beneficial for those that adopt it first. And then, of course, the home robots. We've seen other competitors like the 1X and things like that. And these guys are just going to be creating a lot of abundance in everyday work. Definitely.
I guess Elon Musk. I'm definitely a fan, but I'd say he's been polarizing. At least, you know, the perception of him is a bit polarizing.
Maybe
okay, I just think about my family chat, and
Put number
there's
2
a
onto
lot of
Toby.
detractors. So I guess what would your kind of message be around that? Like, to why, you know, if you're more liberal, left leaning, why should you be a fan?
Yeah, I'd be like candidates versus policies as well. I'd say, like, look at the person's accomplishments versus others, and I think net there's not a lot. You can take the good parts and, you know, reject the lesser good parts, but also as a polarizing entity, I think after the US elections, seeing the sort of biggest sway he's had on the sort of overall election impact, like a lot of people are starting to come around as well. Like the Overton window is expanded, so it might be worth revisiting those news sources, the digest that you have, and maybe just look directly at what he's saying and what he's trying to do. I think that's probably the first point. I mean, the biggest cause of division is actually not listening to each other, leaving the chat, just completely shouting at the person. So I think the first thing is just to listen, embrace, and draw some insights out of what he's saying.
So so your message is people should go and look at the source data.
Yeah.
We have a question here from Toby.
What was the question? Is now, it's probably not an appropriate question, but Bitcoin is obviously here to stay as a currency and an entity. Do you see the same for this transhuman coin?
Yeah, I think transhuman coin is relevant because it's sort of we have our niche community. So we build trust and we use that as our sort of unit of account, means of exchange. But I think, you know, over the long term, if everyone just becomes a transhumanist, then you just need something like Bitcoin to have a single currency. So it's a really good way for us to be able to exchange value between each other right now. So a lot of the transhumanists in Africa, for example, we can actually use that as our currency, and you exchange that for services. So people can actually do things, and that's a real output. So they do all of our marketing. In the meantime, yeah, I think it's useful in that sense. But yeah, I think long-term Bitcoin is here to stay, and that's because it's actually got that computational proof of, you know, validation. Yeah, transhuman coin is on the BNB network, so you know it's like you're relying on the BNB chain to be continuously validated and staked, and those nodes to stay up. It's kind of like Ethereum right now with proof of stake as well, but it's for BNB, it's proof of stake authority. So yeah, I think long-term Bitcoin is the way to go. In the meantime, it's just a way for us to get the community and movement together on a single currency.
Also, do you see this handful of currencies replacing national currencies that, you know, the kind we've had for hundreds of years, the Australian dollar and the American dollar and the British pound and the Thai baht? Do you see them as becoming obsolete?
Yeah, 100%, especially where it's not like a max supply. So you're relying on a sort of a central government, the central sort of stakeholders to determine, like a Federal Reserve to determine the supply. And whenever something goes wrong, they can continue to print and dilute, which is technically a tax on the citizens of the nation. So with Bitcoin, on the other hand, it's a max supply, and you know, everyone can actually can check the hash to see what's been mined. And eventually, you know, I think it will become more apparent that these fiat currencies around the world, which, you know, we've already seen such failures in Nigeria, and you've seen also in Argentina, all these countries that basically have inflated themselves to disaster. And so people are losing trust in these central organizations to actually represent themselves as citizens. I think Web3 and what this network state is doing, that's sort of where I guess the zeitgeist is moving towards. It's then just about making it easier to adopt. So stable coins is the intermediary step, and organizations like Stripe are already embracing stable coins and actually implementing AI agents into them. And so I think the biggest adoption will come from those AI agents, to be honest, because they can't get a bank account on their own. So it's like a killer use case for crypto, for these AI agents to be connected to a crypto wallet and then just transact automatically. So yeah, that's probably the biggest impact. Yeah.
Wow.
Especially these robots, they're going to be doing work, right? So you can actually pay them to do some stuff. You know.
And that will help you. I have another question.
Simon, I suggest we leave questions.
No problem.
We move on so we can finish.
Okay, great.
So I'm just playing the videos in the background anyway. They're just memes, really, just to show the acceleration. I'll skip to the punchline, which is I guess a lot of things are becoming open source and distributed. So this is sort of plays into the whole network state stuff. Like this is TinyBox. It's like the Silicon Valley box from Gavin Belson. It's like you can buy these with like 8 4090s stitched together, and you can run an operating system like TinyGrad, and then Exolabs combines those multiple compute into one cluster. So even with these big centralized tech companies that have these data centers, you could disrupt the likes of NVIDIA's CUDA system with something like an Exolab with a TinyGrad to create distributed compute, and your network state, I just got the new powered that way. A lot of stuff is coming, so we'll probably have GPT-5 by the end of this or start of next calendar year. We've already seen O1, the preview come out, which is Project Strawberry from OpenAI, and GPT-6. These I guess marine animals are just an indicator of the training clusters that have been used. So a shark was GPT-3, a killer whale was GPT-4, and this is GPT-5, and Strawberry probably O2 and GPT-6 as well. There's going to be a lot of shipping of these models post-US election now. We've even seen some of them already start to get teased in the market. So O1 the full version will probably come out next week. And yeah, they'll be followed by all the other competitors from Meta and Google and XAI with Grok 3 by the end of the calendar year. So this stuff is accelerating a lot. It's already at superhuman levels in terms of PhD level science work. So if you look at math, look at PhD level science questions, the machine learning benchmarks, the exams, the MMLU categories, they're already sort of above the average human. And so it's probably got 120 IQ. So I think eventually it's just about, letting the scaling laws play out with the O2, O3 models at the inference level. And so as Jensen Huang at NVIDIA basically illustrated, these tokens, this tokenization of the inputs and outputs is the real breakthrough, since that, attention's all you need paper. And then with the inference scaling is another breakthrough with the O1 model. So you can take text, image, video, text, speech, multimodal, amino acids, brainwaves, and make the output equivalents on the other side. So the machine is able to compute everything. And I think for humans to stay relevant, the likes of Neuralink is something that we'll
Hey, I'm Nolan.
embrace. This is something, for example, it helped. So we got Nolan. So he's basically a quadriplegic at the age of 20s, in his 20s. And, he had to, play games with a stick, and his parents were looking after him. So with Neuralink, he's the first Neuralink patient. He's able to have a lot more autonomy to be able to control the screen with his mind, literally. So he's got telepathy, right? And he's actually playing like some games better than a human can in terms of reflexes. So it's already helping people with disabilities. And we've also seen quadriplegics that are able to stand again by bridging the neural shunt, that where the particular brainstem or the spine has been damaged. And so they're able to bridge that with an equivalent repeater, the brain signals to their hips and legs. So this is already creating miracles, right, in the world. Like blind able to see again, the people that are, paraplegic able to walk again and control things. And eventually this will go beyond just, giving them the original controls of human level. It'll go superhuman, because if you can go straight from a thought to an action, that's sort of the future of humanity and our combined effort with technology. So
The very positive scenario of AI.
The UBI stuff, so universal basic income, it's something that we'll need to have just to make sure that all of human society comes along for the ride. And Elon basically says it's going to be universal generous income, because if you have an abundant supply, things get cheaper. So even if you get paid like the dole, you actually be able to buy more stuff. As long as we keep our governments in check and not inflating that benefit away by printing more money. And so this is sort of where combination of this whole network state stuff with automation, robotics, with AI, longevity, all the stuff, the transhumanist sort of movements are trying to get behind.
Because the way I imagine.
Ilya Sutskever, who was one of the original founders of OpenAI, has now moved on to Safe Superintelligence. He's actually envisioning that abundant future where, the risk is these AIs do get out of hand and they cover the earth with GPUs, data centers, and solar panels. So there is a sort of, we need to maintain our humanist values with that intent on where we point this technology towards, because it's a double-edged sword like every other technology. We just got to be careful, make sure it's aligned with what we want as humanity. And to do that, it's really the way that we distribute, make that peer-to-peer rather than centralizing it. This is sort of our abundant future where, paper clips, so this is an example of a YC startup, Y Combinator startup that wants to put data centers and solar panels in space. And that will sort of create that abundance, so you're not just limited by Earth. And eventually, we'll get to Mars and get to all of that. But just with that, again, used to look up at the sky, wonder our place in the stars. Now we look down and worry about our dirt. How do we change then, flip that mindset again as a fusion party? Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for that, Peter.
Yes.
Alrighty. Since we are running over time, if people have any questions, please send them through to. Would you like to receive questions directly, or shall we collate them and send them to you, Peter?
Up to you guys. Yeah, happy to chat if you still have time, but it sounds like we're pretty short on time already.
We're already over time, so.
Yeah, sorry guys.
All right. Well, if anyone has any questions, feel free to send them through to contact@Fusion, and we shall make sure Peter gets them and so on. Chris, yes?
I'd just like to say, as not a member, as a member of the Australian Democrats, I'd like to say thank you to you guys just for inviting me along, Drew. Miles, Alex, Imogen, thanks for coming and helping me at the recent election. I really appreciate what you guys have done, and thank you for the invitation. It's been great to see what Fusion are doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. All right, then. So the last thing that we had on the list of things today was a presentation from Daryl Killin. He was unable to be with us, but we have a short interview of him as an introduction, and then we have a presentation of his, which hopefully works. Fingers crossed. So let me just pull that up. Sorry, technology is being a moment. So it's a All right, so this is a short interview that I did with Daryl, just as an introduction to who he is and what he does and why he's here to speak to us. And then he has a presentation about what he's doing, which we'll follow up with, that hopefully we can get the sound to sync with. Fingers crossed. Where is my... There. So it's good to meet you, actually, because I've already heard about you sort of very much on the grapevine. Whatever you do.
The sound is almost unhearable.
Or a lot better, you never. Sorry, what was that?
It's very, very soft.
It's as loud as it gets. That could be a problem.
Drew, let's skip it then. Yeah, we can't hear.
That is unfortunate. Was it like you could tell there was sound, but it was soft?
Yeah, like someone's trapped in a box.
That is unfortunate. And it's not a setting that I can change. Hang on.
Drew, does the sound on the YouTube video, is it okay?
It is.
Yeah. It's a question of what your audio inputs and where you're streaming audio from and to.
Yeah, I've just changed the setting. Let's try that again. So it's good to meet you, actually, because I've already heard about you sort of very much on the grapevine.
It's whatever you've heard. It's probably a lot worse, but anyway.
Or a lot better. You never know. I've heard you characterized as a whistleblower on carbon credits.
That's probably fairly accurate. Yes, I have done some whistleblowing just this year publicly, but prior to this year, I've been involved with the carbon industry since its inception in 2011. I've worked full time in the sector. I set up a number of companies. I was a co-founder of Select Carbon, which got bought by Shell in 2018, but I left that in 2014. I worked for Natural Carbon, which ended up winding up in 2021. I worked for them for 4 years, and apart from those two companies, I have worked as really an independent contractor in the carbon space, providing services to Indigenous savanna projects on Cape York. I have been involved with aerial burning for over a decade and helped manage about 1.5 million hectares with 5 different Indigenous orgs for the past 10 years. generated many millions of carbon credits in that time. And I had my own carbon tree planting project. So I was the first person in Australia to register a carbon planting with with trees back in December 2012 under the old Carbon Farming Initiative. So I was the first person in Australia to register a carbon project for tree planting.
Right. So you're
So
very
I have
much on the ground.
I'm very much on the
front
ground.
lines.
Front line, I'm at the coalface in terms of how these projects actually work. Like, I mean, I'm a forester by training, 4-year degree at Melbourne University, and I have deep experience in operationalizing carbon projects for both tree planting and savanna burning. And I've also made quite a lot of biochar in my time. And I've been involved with the Carbon Market Institute and the whole carbon industry since its inception in Australia in 2011. And I'm extremely well informed. And I know most of the CEOs or leadership team, some of the leadership team in a lot of these large carbon companies. So there's very few people with my depth in experience in the industry who have come out and said the things that I have said. The primary reason I went to the media this year was because of the moves by the fossil fuel sector to continue, rather, not just starting. As I said, they bought Select Carbon in 2019 for about $77 million. As I said, I wasn't part of that sale. I'd left the company 4 years beforehand. And I've just observed the gradual movement of the fossil fuel sector into buying up the equity on the carbon farming solution side. And there's a recent fund being set up by Rio Tinto, BHP and Qantas to establish their own fund to invest in carbon projects. Now, whilst you would think that's a good thing, right? $250 million the fund wants to raise, and those three companies, Qantas, BHP and Rio Tinto, have put in 80 million. Now, to the layperson, that all sounds good, right? It's like, fossil fuel companies.
Yeah,
it sounds great, doesn't it? But when you realise that they're doing that to generate their own ACCUs, their ACCUs are Australian carbon credit units. They're the unit that you use to offset emissions, and they're supposed to. What we got told by the federal government was that projects like myself would generate carbon credits, and then the fossil fuel sector or the demand sector under the safeguard mechanism would need to purchase ACCUs. Now, as the ACCU price has gone up over time, a lot of these fossil fuel companies have now, the price has reached the point at which the fossil fuel companies, instead of buying the product through the safeguard mechanism, which they are still doing, their long-term strategy is to hold equity in the supply in a generation of them because they can do it cheaper. Now, again, this all sounds fine, except these are profit-making ventures, right? So here we have the carbon offset industry only exists because of the emissions profile of these kinds of companies, right?
Yep.
Now, I don't know about you or anyone else out there, but I have a problem with the polluter, the reason we've created this market, who's supposed to buy the end product and pay the real cost of the externality, the economic externality that their company hasn't paid for ever, and it has become extremely rich off not having to pay.
Yeah.
I have a problem when those entities make money from their emissions in their companies, that their own internal companies that make obviously dig up iron ore or export or coal or oil or gas or whatever. They're making profit on the emission side, and now they're buying up solution and they're making profit on the carbon offset side.
Right.
So why are we allowing the people who created the problem, didn't pay for decades the price, and now want to undercut the prices that of all of our other projects by creating their own equity in the supply. Why are we allowing them to make money from the solution? And where is the incentive for them to reduce their emissions apart from, tacit or procrastinating, really? Where is the
Certainly sounds
incentive?
like a substantial loophole.
It's a tremendous conflict of interest for them to make money from the problem and to make money from the solution. If the same entities are involved with that, where is the incentive to eliminate the industry? We only have a carbon offset industry because of the emissions profile of these companies. And I'm fundamentally against them having equity in the supply chain.
Yeah. So can I ask a clarifying question here? So this is not a case where by having equity or control or whatever of these carbon companies that they are directly sourcing and therefore avoiding a market price, but it's that by having control of them, they are explicitly offsetting their expenses by extracting a portion of the profit at the other end as well.
Well, they can do it cheaper at scale because they can possibly undercut a small scale farm forester somewhere, or they can do things cheaper. It's all about they want to pay as little as possible.
So they're actually pushing down the price of a carbon credit by investing in scaling up these things.
Well, they have the potential to. They have the potential to undercut the rest of the small scale projects. And I have a problem with them not being. We were told by the federal government that there would be a supply side and a demand side. We weren't told that the demand side would become the supply side. And we were told by the federal government to go forth and conquer and make ACCUs, and the demand side will have to pay for them. Carbon farming is hard work at the current prices, let me tell you. It's hard work. Why should we allow them to influence and drop the price through their increase in supply? And why aren't they buying ACCUs, which the federal government told us that they would have to do? So, but it's not just the fossil fuel sector that I have a problem with. I have a problem with the regulator and the government and how they have bastardized this industry.
Yeah.
The price in particular and the market price. And I'm happy to be quoted for that. The fossil fuel sector does not want to pay the true cost of its emissions or its externality. They're trying to get away with paying the absolute minimum, which if you're their CFO, I completely understand that you'd want to do that. But we didn't create this market to benefit the polluters. We created this market to fix an environmental problem. And if you look at the problem right now, we're not going to hit our 2030 target for Paris. And the only reason we're not going to hit them is because of poor government policy, poor government market design, and interference and lobbying by the emissions side to keep the price low. So right now, I'm cutting to the chase. So the carbon price is being kept low through releases of carbon abatement contracts, which were decisions made by a previous minister, which were put huge profits into existing incumbents in the industry and have cast a long shadow over the carbon price. What this means for climate action is that new market participants have not been encouraged, because if that price had got towards $60, $70, $80, we would have had biochar coming on board. We'd have a lot more tree planting. We'd have all this carbon action going on and climate action. And the reason it can't is because the government and the industry themselves participated in market manipulation. And that's why I've come out as a whistleblower this year and said this is not a real market. It is not supply and demand driven like normal. It's not a normal market. It's a manipulated government market. And it's time someone called it out and said, not only is the price manipulated, we're now allowing the fossil fuel sector, the sector that caused the emissions problem in the first place, and not just the fossil fuel sector, anyone on the demand side under the safeguard mechanism, we're now allowing them to have equity in the solution as well. If that's not the definition of a corrupted market, I don't know what is. So they're the real reasons I came out publicly this year. And that's why that's why we're not going to meet Paris, and that's why we have such a conflicted carbon market, and why we need to separate out carbon trading from carbon agency as well. And most Australians would not know 1% of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
so that's why I decided to call it out.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time here.
Great. And good luck for your AGM, and hello to everyone. And if you're ever up here in Cairns, I'm not this cranky all the time. You can come and have a beer with me. And I'll go out and show you happy to show people trees and biochar, and I'm quite passionate about the actual climate change solutions. I'm just not passionate about the government and the market.
Fair enough. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that was the introduction with Daryl, and he has provided a presentation on what he's actually doing directly, which hopefully will work. If two programs can talk to each other successfully. Oh, for God's sake. All right, someone tell me if this is actually audible on your end in a moment. When it decides to start.
Okay, thank you. It's Daryl Killin.
Yeah, that was good.
Yep, loud and clear.
Here, and talking to my presentation to the Fusion Party AGM on the 17th of November 2024 on how the ERF, the Emissions Reduction Fund, is failing farmers, a case study. I'm a registered professional forester with Forestry Australia and Director of Native Conifers Carbon Sink. It's a pilot project under the Queensland Government Land Restoration Fund and also a registered ERF or Emissions Reduction Fund project. In fact, this project was Australia's first carbon sink, being the first tree planting project registered under the Carbon Farming Initiative back in December 2012. Next slide, please. I've had my fair share of projects and ventures that did not prevail or succeed. I was a founder of Select Carbon in 2011. However, I left there in 2014 due to differences with management. And I also recently had to shut down a carbon blockchain startup that I'd run for 5 years called Ecosystem Exchange. I submitted an unsuccessful tender to the Clean Energy Regulator to develop the carbon exchange in Australia in 2021. And that process the government's running for that exchange is also fundamentally flawed. Third slide. I'm also an author. I've been involved in a number of publications about forestry, carbon and sustainable development in Northern Australia and specifically Northern Queensland, the wet tropics and Cape York Peninsula. I am a forest scientist with a first-class honours degree from Melbourne University and a diploma in forest products, and I've also got a graduate certificate in management. Some of those papers there you can see. I was also a pioneer of biochar in Queensland. I was the first person to oversee commercial quantities of biochar from sustainable sources using a Earth Systems prototype machine back in 2013. I made 100 dry tonnes of biochar, and that was used across northern Queensland to test responses to the region's agriculture to increase soil carbon. I currently have a smaller scale biochar kiln at one of my properties. Slide 5. So carbon. We have a carbon market because of the theory anyway that carbon markets can solve problems in a way that is more efficient than government. And generally speaking, that is true if supply and demand operate and the market includes externalities that are appropriately priced. So you can see here that there's a whole bunch of potential carbon solutions with a range of prices. Now, I don't agree with all these prices, particularly some of the environmental plantings and forestry pricing. But you can see the idea that we start off with the cheapest things and move to the more expensive. That's what a market should do. Slide 6. In 2020, there was a forestry greenhouse gas emissions reduction investor cost curve developed with an impact of Australian dollars at $69 a tonne of carbon dioxide. And you can see there that there's huge potential to reforest Australia and earn carbon credits. However, the actual mechanism to do this, the policies and the methods required have not been developed suitably by a clean energy regulator. And I've proven this with my pilot project. Slide 7. So native conifers have been around for a long time, about 180 to 200 million years. Flowering plants have only been around for 65 million years, and native conifers were actually all the forests that grew around planet Earth and increased the oxygen on planet Earth to make life more successful. And ironically, those massive conifer, native sort of conifer plant forests are now the fossil fuels that we're digging up in the form of coal and oil and exporting. So our fossil fuel sector is using resources created by conifer forests millions of years ago. Slide 8. I grow. This is a picture rather of almost 100 years, about 90-year-old plantation in the Atherton Tablelands of Kauri pine. It's got more carbon per hectare than any other planting in Australia, and also is starting to encourage some regeneration of other rainforest species. So remember, these trees are native conifers. They're not exotic pines like radiata pine. They are conifers that occur naturally in Australia. Slide 9. So we have a range of methods that operate in Australia under the Emissions Reduction Fund. Now, I won't go into the details of some of this. We can look at this later. But suffice to say, there's a farm forestry method, and slide 10 says there's a plantation method. And there's also an environmental planting method that has just been reviewed, and there's a new one out. Now, each of these three methods basically doesn't have the ability to mix and match. We can't run a plantation forestry project next to an environmental planting project on the same parcel of land. The government won't let you do that. And ironically, that therefore forces you to do either one or the other. Slide 11. You can see here under a plantation scenario, when you increase the carbon stock, you then have a thinning and the carbon stock reduces slightly and then responds and then goes up to the harvest age. And then when you harvest, you have a loss of carbon, but the green line represents the amount that you get credited for establishing plantations, because if you keep replanting those plantations, you get a steady state. You assume that steady state, you'll get more carbon until you harvest, and then it'll dip down again and you replant. So that The government does have that correct, the actual crediting. Slide 12. Slide 12 shows a slightly different proposal with more regular thinning. And slide 13 is when you convert a plantation from short rotation to long rotation, say pulpwood to sawlog. Slide 14 is one of the regulator's guides to the various tree planting projects, and I just put that up there to point out that even a so-called simple flowchart from the government doesn't seem to give you much idea about what option you may have. Slide 15, 16 just talks about the registration of the carbon right. So I was the first person in Queensland to register a carbon right over a property, and it's still difficult because we don't have a relevant office in the state government that helps encourage registerable carbon rights on land title. And this is another area that requires input. So getting back to the project, slide 17 shows the before and after of my planting. We have been using the gymnosperms, the conifers, to establish what we call high-rise carbon plantings that maximise the carbon sequestration per unit area. The photos are taken 7 years apart on basalt-derived rainforest at Ravenshoe, elevation 1,000 millimetres and rainfall 1,400 millimetres per year. Elevation was 1,000 metres rather. Native conifers sequester more carbon per hectare than any other native tree species in the wet tropics. Slide 18 shows we have 3 primary framework species. We have hoop pine, carry pine and bunya pine, although increasingly we're just planting hoop pine and bunya pine because carry is difficult to source at the correct provenance. So all these species are apically dominant, which means they have a strong growing tip, and they have a slenderness ratio that's combined with their ability to regrow after snapping off makes them more likely to endure cyclones. And these species also have a range of ecological adaptations that serve them well in both wetter and drier climates than the present. Slide 19 shows some bunya pine cones that I have collected and planted up. Bunya is also a very important crop to the traditional owners of southeast Queensland and North Queensland too, and is a very popular tree. Slide 20 shows the kind of land that we're looking to reforest with this project and some of the LiDAR that we've done. And you can see with that bottom right-hand corner that the erosion from grazing, so that erosion creates sedimentation, which runs straight out to the Great Barrier Reef, and increasing tree cover reduces sedimentation to the reef. Slide 21 shows you a planting of conifers and how successful it's been to stabilise the site. Slide 22 shows some before and after on the right-hand side of our conifers, and you can see there the conifers on the slope. And the left-hand photo, you can see the area that we revegetate in the creeks. So we replant rainforest in the creeks, high biodiversity. We put the conifers up on the slopes, and over time, we're seeking to maximise both biodiversity and carbon. But the government doesn't allow us to use the 2 different methods on the one parcel of land. So we're currently forced to use the environmental planting method, which does not give us the additional carbon from the conifer planting. So we're not able to capture the carbon from this improved system, and the government has just very simple bureaucratic, administrative, silly rules that could be very easily changed, but they don't seem to want to. Slide 23 shows that we are working on a forestry bot. That's our existing prototype, and we're currently looking at upgrading this prototype in partnership with HQ Plantations that owns all the plantations in Queensland, and also James Cook University. We've got an application in to put artificial intelligence over this and also upgrade the base machine to try to get weed control to begin with automated, which would reduce the cost of reforestation. Slide 24 shows again the creek planting above with rainforest and then the conifers on the slope. And on the right hand side there, that red arrow refers to a fence, and either side of the fence 50 years ago conifers were planted. You can still see them there. On the left hand side you've got the same two species on planting, hoop pine and bunyip pine. And on the right hand side the area was obviously ungrazed. So left of the arrow was grazed for 50 years, right wasn't. And you'll see on the right hand side when we remove grazing we actually get mass germination of understory rainforest species beneath the canopy of conifers. And this maximises both biodiversity and carbon at a lower cost than the current high costs of pure rainforest restoration plantings, which can be up to $50,000 a hectare. So this is why I've developed this pilot project, to demonstrate that we can have our cake and eat it too. Slide 25 just shows some existing native conifer plantations and how ecologically beneficial they can be. Slide 26 shows the LiDAR that we've taken at that 90-year-old Carry Pine plantation that has more carbon per hectare than any other planting in Australia. So that's using terrestrial laser scanning. Slide 27 and 28, skip those. They just refer to some inventory practices. And the same with 29 and 30, to be frank. Let's go straight to slide 31. Full cam is the full carbon abatement model. So this just shows the extra carbon in the light blue line that you get from conifer plantings, and the purple line is the environmental plantings. The aqua line shows the effect of thinning and a harvested plantation, whereas the light blue line is an unharvested and unthinned plantation. So you'll see there the light blue line gets more carbon than the purple line. The combination of the two in my project should theoretically give me more carbon credits, but because the government won't let me have two separate methods on the one block of land, I'm unable to realise that potential. Slide 32 just shows some of the LiDAR techniques. Slide 33 refers to some of the carbon forestry benefits that if by combining, when I talk about forestry, I'm talking about trees that can be harvested. They may not be harvested, but they can be. And a lot of farmers want flexibility to do that. They don't just want to plant trees only for the environmental reasons. And as I've showed in my earlier planting, we also plant the creeks up to high biodiversity plantings and we don't harvest those. So there's lots of benefits to my model. And I'm currently writing up a lot of these issues and submitting them to the state and federal government to try to get a more supportive policy and market position from them so that these kinds of projects can actually work on the ground. So the remaining slides just have some links through to related matters to do with this presentation. So that's a bit about my project, and I know it's a bit technical, but combined with some of my market commentary, I hope you've enjoyed this presentation around the kind of forest I'd like to create. And I've only come out and been a whistleblower for this market because, as I indicated in the discussion with Drew, we don't get a sufficient price to enable me to scale up this project because of the market manipulation by the fossil fuel sector and the government. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, so that was Daryl Killin's presentation on what he's doing in the reforestation space and the issues that it has with the current shape of the carbon market. Now, Daryl has said that obviously he's not here, but he's more than happy to answer any questions. We'll take those questions to contact@Fusion Party, and we'll collate them and send them to him, and then he'll get back to people. So if you have any questions about it, feel free to shoot them through us. We'll sort it out.
If there's any questions for Greg, Chipp can also send it through to contact. He can answer those too.
Yes, that is accurate as well. All right then. So I believe that now concludes all of the business that we have on the agenda for today. We have run somewhat over time, so I appreciate that everyone stuck around to listen on to the conversations that we've just had in the last hour or so. Yes, Miles?
Thank you. I want to abuse my privilege of not having asked any questions on any speakers yet to offer a ethical consideration for people. And for context, I grew up in North Queensland, and like I'm recognizing all those species and all that up in table ups there. And the ethical question was kind of actually put to me by Bryony Edwards, party organizer, who was here in the meeting earlier a few years ago, when she said that we can look at reforestation and revegetation to try and restore what ecosystems were like before colonization, and that's one thing we can do. But in the era of biosphere collapse and worsening climate change, that we are now faced with very real consideration that some of the most effective ways to actually mitigate or reduce the impact of climate change will involve introducing non-native species and creating essentially synthetic or artificial biomes. So like fully natural plants, trees, animal species, and so on, but with introduced species, with non-native species. And I think Daryl presented a lot of very hard data in his presentation to say that some of these non-native species are going to be vastly more effective at doing carbon sequestration. So the ethical question there is that, do we have an obligation to take this course of action, and how far should we take it? Because there's a lot of implications for land management and the environmental movement more generally. So I just wanted to leave everyone with that sort of that ethical conundrum to consider.
Yeah, that is a fun one.
So fun.
I also just wanted to sort of comment on a couple of points made in the chat. So there were a couple of people that raised thoughts about why it might be a problem that people are producing carbon offsets if they're actually still serving the intended purpose. But like, it's worth understanding that this is not a natural market. So it's not like there's no natural product that is being produced. This is an artificial market, which is in part funded by taxpayer money to specifically cause a market shift that is intended to keep carbon producing industries, or intended to extract from carbon producing industries the cost of their externalities, so that that cost can be covered and so that the expense of that can be used to manage the impact on society. So because it's not a natural market, it's undermined, and essentially it's allowing the companies to profit off of the taxpayer at both sides if the producers are also part of the solution. So that I don't know if that was clear, but
thanks, Drew. Yeah, I think that was my comment. And I did appreciate that. Yeah, it does undermine the natural market forces. I was just meaning in terms of the actual carbon program itself. The environmental impact remains the same. It's just undermining the market forces that may optimize its function, I guess. But yeah, thanks for clarifying that.
yeah, and it makes it directly at the cost of the taxpayer more so, rather than through an offloaded mechanism. Yeah. All right. That was the only thing I had to comment on that. I suppose at this point, thank you everyone for having been here. We shall make sure that we get the voting digital email out soon. And at this point, I shall stop the recording and formally close the